everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. 1 second, still get myself set up here. But it is now 8:30 and we can now begin the live stream. I hope that you guys are as excited as I am. It is a wonderful Monday night. We're going to have a good time, or at least I'm going to do my best to have a good time. Am I right? So before we get started, a couple things. I want to talk for just a moment, because this isn't just a reading stream. This is where I get to talk with you guys and just have a relaxing moment. First of all, I want to say to everyone who is here, welcome so much to the Ravens Roost, where it's just a chill out and read stream. We don't play any games here, so if you're here to watch me play a game, you come to the wrong place. This is a de-stress area, and the reason I try to do it Monday is because Monday I feel like is the super stressful day. Everyone's worked up because it's the beginning of the week. And people are going back to school or back to work, and I know that it's a stressful day for me, so I try to relax and chill with you guys and have a good time. I want to start by saying that this week is going to be a little different, and I want to run down some of the things that are going on before I get into the reading. So first of all, this week is going to be weird, and I'll break down what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I'm going to be leaving for my hometown. I'm going to be heading back to my hometown tomorrow, just for the day. I've got to go and deal with some insurance issues back at home, and I've also got to get a doctor's appointment in to deal with my blood pressure. Nothing serious, I don't think, but you know, it's just going to be a day trip. But I've got to come back that same day because I work again Wednesday morning. And then that night, of course, Lark will be doing his stream. Thursday, if you guys didn't know, is the big Warriors Den reveal of the new hero. Now, I understand that some people have leaked the new hero information. I have no interest in looking at it. I don't want to be surprised. I want to be surprised. I don't want to look at all that stuff just yet. I want to see it. But for those of you who do not know this, Havoc from YouTube, my buddy, he actually just released a video where he revealed that he is currently in Canada getting ready to be a part of that Warriors Den. It is a pretty big deal. I'm very proud of him. I'm very happy for him. Everyone, please either go to Twitch to watch the Warriors Den or come to my channel and watch it with me so that we can all support Havoc. It's going to be really, really awesome. I'm very much looking forward to it. That will be Thursday. And then on Friday, of course, is For Honor Friday, where we will be talking all about what is going to be happening. But after this week, I go right into training to be an SP, or a service professional at work, which is a assistant manager position. I'm nervous about it, but not because of the workload. I'm sure it'll be fine, but because of the scheduling. I don't know what the schedule will be like. I don't know how it will impact me and the channel. So I don't know what to expect as of yet. I will know Friday, hopefully, what my schedule will be like, and I will let you guys know if there need to be any changes. I've worked very hard to maintain the schedule I have, where I can have Monday nights free, Friday nights free, and Sundays free, so that I can do my normal streaming schedule. But there's no guarantees that they'll be able to honor that. I hope they do, but we will see. Anyway. With all that out of the way, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Again, I hope you guys have been having a good Monday. One more thing that I'll say before we get started. I have debated moving this streaming series to my second channel, because that channel is dedicated to writing, and this is about me reading to you. My problem is I don't think that this series will get as much attention if I move it to that channel, and I want this series to get attention. So to compromise, what I'm going to do is at the beginning and end of each stream I do, I'm going to advertise my second channel. So guys, if you want to hear more of my writing advice, if you want to hear some of my writing theories and philosophies, if you want to hear me read other stories, if you want to hear me just go into the world of storytelling and writing that I love so much, please go check out the Ravens Writing Room, which is my second channel. It's still a fledgling channel. It just recently reached 1,000 subscribers, but it isn't getting a whole lot of viewers. It's only gotten that many subscribers because of my fan base here who want to support me, but it doesn't get a whole lot of views or a lot of attention. Please, guys, definitely go support that channel. Would love it if you did. All right. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. Tonight, as usual, we will start with a short story. I have a short story already pulled up, ready to go. I wrote this last year. It's called What's Real. It was written May 3rd, 2023. It has about almost 2,000 views on DeviantArt, but only 3 favorites and 2 comments. So that gives you kind of an idea of how things roll. My fame on YouTube gets me views, but not a lot of traction. So it's one of those things. So anyway, let me adjust my microphone just a little bit, because I don't have a great mic. I get a lot of criticism for having a crap tier mic, but it's what I can afford. All right. So without any further ado, let us jump right into the reading for tonight. This is What's Real, a short story. I convinced myself more than once that it was nothing but a dream. Perhaps the whole thing was just made up in my head. My sensations tried to tell me otherwise, but my heart could barely comprehend it. I lay there in the grass beneath me with wind brushing hair across my brow and the sunset casting its incredible art across the sky. The gradual hues of hot pink and warm orange that poured out from the descending sunshine painted the horizon. As the streaks of blue and purple of the night sky beyond them giving off something of a skyline shadow to kiss the light goodnight, I turned my head up to the sky to take in the sight. I had to strain my head a little to see beyond the peach tree branches that hung like a canopy umbrella to cover me from above. The gentle breeze blew the leaves softly, and the flower petals of the tree swayed along with an indescribable grace that reminded me of, yet again, something out of a dream. I attempted to adjust my body and sit up some more, but an unfamiliar weight on my chest stopped me. My eyes turned away from the beauty of the heavens and looked down at the glory resting on my chest. Her body was like the most delicate rose petal, small and as if the slightest touch would send me into fits of ecstasy. I hesitated to brush her long strands of silky hair out of her face. Her eyes were closed, but I knew that behind her lids lay a pair of blue eyes that could rival the ocean itself for depth and the sun for brilliance. Her head was nestled on my chest, just above my pectoral, and her soft cheek pressed over so softly to me that it managed to mush a little into her face in an adorable frame. Her lips were closed, luscious and enticing me to kiss them, but I withheld, not only because doing so would wake her, but because leaning down far enough to do it would be quite difficult, since her head was just up under my chin, that if I turned my head far enough down to look at her, my chin would brush her hair. Her ear was pressed to where I could feel my heart beating like a drum, not out of fear, but out of excitement. I shivered involuntarily, and my arm that wrapped around her like a sheet now gently moved along her hair, brushing it down with my fingers and sliding it behind her ear. She stirred but didn't wake, and I felt my breath catch in my throat at the way she moved. Her shirt fell off her shoulders slightly, revealing her fair, bare flesh. Her left arm was placed on me as if I were a tree for her to cling to, a lifeline in a storm. Her other arm was tucked up between her chest and my side, curled in a manner so as to take up as little space as possible. Her breasts, I could feel them against my side, and I inhaled deeply at the realization of how they touched. She was not naked. She wore a t-shirt that prevented direct skin contact and a jacket that hugged her figure, the color of polished wood. Her jeans felt coarse, and yet the soft legs under them betrayed a gentle caress as one leg straddled mine. Her soft breathing caused her whole body to fill and then collapse again, and I was so starkly aware of the way she felt, breathed, and moved. Every sense and every motion of her gorgeous form left me speechless, so I couldn't have said her name even if I wanted to. I didn't, of course. I wanted to stay like this for as long as possible. I wiggled my feet a bit as they were very close to the edge of the hill. The tree that we lay under stood stoic on top of a grassy hill that overlooked the city beyond it. It was a quiet place that felt somehow detached from the world. As the sun faded away beyond the city and beyond sight, the light caught her hair, and for the briefest of moments I swore that I saw it glow, shimmering like gold in candlelight. I could barely look at her in the face. It was liable to bring tears to my eyes. How could something like her be real? How could this moment be a real moment? It wasn't. I knew it wasn't. It just couldn't be. Things like this don't happen to people like me. I felt the tears trickling down my cheeks from the unpleasant conclusion, and the shuddering of my heart must have stirred her as she finally looked up at me. those unwavering blue sapphires gazing into me with the most innocent smile. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice like a warm flow of water down my body. My arms moved up and around her to hold her. "This can't be real," I whispered back to her. Her smile never faded, and I saw the twinkle of mischievousness behind her gaze. "Why not?" she asked. I shook my head in response. The words failed as they tried to pass my lips. "Don't you want it to be?" "More than anything," I admitted. "But how can it be?" She slid her body up mine, and very carefully she rested her lips on mine and kissed them, slowly and with a simple passion. I accepted them and tasted her. She slid her lips over mine, and we began to suck each other's lips as if fearful it would be the last time. When we finally broke the kiss, she was gazing at me, her eyes glistening, and her supple hand reaching for me as she stroked the side of my face with the back of her fingers. "I am real. Everything here is real," she smiled as the trailing tear streaks rolled gracefully along her face. I wanted to stop them. I started to lean into her and take her face in my hands and stop those tears from falling. I couldn't bear them to seep from her beautiful eyes. My hands made their way to her, but she took them before they could reach her. "Don't be afraid," she encouraged me. But I was afraid. More than afraid, I was so lonely. This moment with her, I felt like that loneliness and fear was nothing but a distant memory. Something to forget and leave behind, never to bother me again. But the closer she came to me and the more affection she showed, the more fear I felt that it was all just a momentary illusion. I couldn't lose her. I was so scared to lose this angel I'd come to love so much. "Stay with me," I whispered. "I won't leave you," she breathed back. I didn't need her kiss as much as I needed those hands on my skin and that voice in my ear. I needed to know that she was there. I needed to know she was real. And with each touch, I felt that affirmation. The sun finally vanished behind the horizon, and as the night set in, I threw my arms around her soft body and hugged her to me like she might vanish with the light. "Please," I whispered. She didn't answer, but I felt her stroking my hair, her lips on my neck and chest, as she told me with her body what I wanted so badly to hear. I kept my eyes closed, content to feel her rather than see her. Besides, I knew that in time I would open my eyes again and be in my room, far away from this peach tree, this hill, and this city that doesn't exist. The sun would be rising, and this gorgeous woman would be gone, and I'd feel the pain of solitude again, the pain of being unwanted. But right now I would surrender to this eternity, to this moment, and maybe if it was really meant to be, maybe just once, it wouldn't be a dream after all. And that was the story. Not much, it's pretty short. But What's Real was a short story I wrote on a day where I was very, very much lonely. I was feeling a lot of pain that day because I had had a dream very similar to that. And I wanted to write out my feelings, but also practice my descriptive skill, because I think one of the skills that a good writer needs is the power to create imagery through words, through writing, because it's very easy to paint a picture or to show a clip and get a visual. But if you can use your words to describe a scene, that takes a lot of descriptive power. And good writers, I feel like, can establish a lot of emotional power through descriptors. So I very much wanted to capture that. So let me know what you guys thought about that while I go ahead and pull up New Epoch, because I know that's what you are all waiting for. Let's see, where did we leave off? I think we left off on chapter 22, so we'll pick up there. Was this based on the Yuki Onna? No, it was based on a dream I had. But yep, that was What's Real. And now we will pick up with New Epoch, chapter 22. All right, well, glad that y'all liked it. I'm glad that y'all enjoyed it. All right, so New Epoch Chapter 22. I wrote this chapter on May 29th, 2020, so it is about 3 or 4 years old now. So here we go. I thought there was going to be a twist that she was a succubus, my mistake. Oh no, not all of my stories have supernatural elements or monsters in them. Some of them are just, emotional tales. That's one thing that I always try to capture in my story writing is emotion. I try to put emotion into everything. All right. Well, let's get to it. Oh, hold on. I just got a text. Let me see what this is about. Okay. Not important. It was just my dad reminding me about a few things. Okay. Here we go. Chapter 22. The cabin that was once Titania's home was no more, just a pile of burned rubble and wood. As she walked among the tattered remains of her sanctuary, searching for anything that once belonged to her that was still intact, Mariel, Aenor, and Philip all sat just beyond the wreckage, watching her sadly. Damn, to lose your home, your family, and your security all in just 24 hours, Philip growled. She's tough, but everyone's got a breaking point. She'll be fine, Aenor remarked a little coldly. Let's be honest with ourselves. We've all lost a lot since the cataclysm. Philip shot him a dangerous look but said nothing. Mariel caught sight of it and finally stood up angrily, walking between the two. Okay, so what is it? Why are you two so mad at each other? You've been at each other's throats since the prison cell, she demanded. It's private, Aenor remarked. Then why keep wearing it on your chest like a badge of fucking honor, Philip sneered. Just admit it. You hate Titania because of what she is. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who likes ogres, Philip, Aenor remarked. No, but you're a special case, right? Philip replied. Aenor crossed his arms and started walking away. Oh, and you're going where? Back home. I don't have the time for this right now, and I've got to get out of the Citadel now, or the demoness and you go, it's none of my business. I just want to be left alone, Philip, and I wish you'd respect that. Aenor snapped back. I don't know where you go, but if it means anything, I hope we meet again. As he walked away, his shoulders sagged under the weight of something unsaid. Mariel looked at Philip in confusion, who just shook his head. Sorry, Philip replied. It's not my place to say what's wrong with that man. But you do know, Mariel asked. Philip nodded. He's actually one of my usual customers. I've traded herbs and alchemy supplies with him for the last few years, and in that time we talk a lot. And eventually, yes, he told me, Philip admitted. Then why are you so mad at him about it now? Mariel asked. Because it's not helping anything, Philip explained. It's petty, and more than a little inappropriate for him to be acting like this. Look, just tell me, Philip, Mariel pleaded. Why does he hate Titania so much? Philip stared off after Aenor, as if he could still see him far off in the distance, getting closer and closer to town. The afternoon sun was burning hot on Mariel's back, and she was rubbing her skin as if to cool it off. Philip glanced at her for a brief moment before sighing. During the cataclysm, his wife turned into an ogre as well. But she lost her mind and went on a rampage, so he had to put her down. Philip turned and walked back towards the destroyed house while Mariel took in the words that she'd just been given. I can't believe it, Philip snapped back. Not everyone who lived through the cataclysm are still whole. Some are broken in ways we simply can't imagine, and Aenor is one of them. I'm not saying I like the way he treats Titania or how he acts about ogres in general, but damn it all, I can't hate him either. I get it. He did help us escape. That counts for something, right? It does, but wearing his attitude on his sleeve the way he does doesn't help anyone. And if you didn't notice, we're in something of a crisis right now, Philip pointed out. What'll you do? Well, once Titania gets her affairs in order, I'm going back to work. I still have to make a living, and that means traveling again. But I'll be crossing near Serendal in a few weeks. Maybe we'll see each other there. Is that where you're going? Mariel didn't answer him, but looked on at Titania digging through her destroyed home. She hadn't thought much about her next steps now. I mean, she had a goal, of course, but reaching it was never easy. She couldn't go alone, and she'd been in Orkshire so long that leaving it felt wrong somehow. Though she knew that inevitably she'd have to now. She'd been seen helping a fugitive escape. She, Philip, and Titania were certainly no longer welcome here. Mariel! Philip! Mariel turned to see two figures running quickly up the hill towards them. One was Blemish, looking a little bloody and bruised, but very much in one piece. He was grinning from ear to ear in excitement. The other was just behind him, hurrying as fast as his stubbier legs could carry him. Blemish, Mariel smiled. You made it. Well, Grognar helped, he admitted. I couldn't just let him get killed, could I? Grognar laughed. His eyes then fell on Titania's house, and his face fell. Titania was kneeling over one spot in the house, her back to the group, and he frowned. Blemish noticed too and started to walk towards her, but Grognar reached up and grabbed his arm sharply. "Hold on, kid," he urged. "She's not ready for you yet." "But she's upset. I need to—" "Let me go first," Grognar urged. "You let Philip and Mariel take a look at your injuries. I'll talk to her." Before Blemish could argue, Philip walked over to inspect Blemish thoroughly. Grognar walked swiftly over to Titania and stood behind her, brushing his beard aside. The ground was still caked in ash, and the air stank of burnt wood and destroyed cloth. Titania was kneeling over the spot where her shelf had been, where shattered dining ware and a few burnt items that were beyond recognition remained. "If I'd known what they would do," Grognar whispered. Titania tensed up at his voice, and though he couldn't see her face, he knew there were tears dripping from her face. "David," Grognar muttered. "They're gone," Titania whispered. "It's all gone." Grognar didn't know how to answer or ask what she meant by that. But what he did know is that Titania needed to process this, so he sat down next to her, getting his beard in the ash and running his hands through it. Titania looked away from him, fighting back tears. "Mom and Dad, I told them I wasn't their son anymore," Titania whimpered. "I shouted it. I screamed at them, Grognar." That was an exaggeration, but to Titania she might as well have thrown it in their faces, so Grognar didn't contradict her. The look on their faces. They stared at me like they couldn't believe what I'd said. "If they connected you to them, they would have been tortured or punished because of you. Titania, you did what you had to do." "Why'd I have to be an ogress? Why couldn't I have just stayed human? None of this would have happened." Titania was now bawling, beating her fist into the ash, sending splintered and scorched wood in all directions. "My family's gone. My house is gone. My weapons are gone. My belongings are gone," she screamed. There was a soft gust of wind that filled the silence between Grognar and Titania now, and Grognar let her scream. Let her be angry. She needed to yell right now, and he was more than willing to let her. Titania was stronger than anyone Grognar knew. She was a warrior, and she always seemed to brush off insults and slights, but right now she was just as fragile as anyone else. And like anyone else, Grognar wouldn't leave her alone while she struggled with this. He stayed seated and started to reach for his pipe, but then thought better of it. "The stuff on that old shelf, they belonged to your parents, didn't they?" "They were just little things that they'd given me before the cataclysm," Titania hiccuped. "Now they're gone. Just like... Grognar suddenly saw glimpses of Titania's face, and his heart broke. Her once strong and ferocious face was now a picture of pain and defeat, contorted in tears and whimpering. Her lips were quivering, and her eyes were puffy from constant tears and blinking. How long had she been crying? Grognar stood and walked in front of her, sitting down in front of her and reaching out to touch her shoulder. "Look, David, they'll be all right. You did the right thing, and now they'll be safe under the Inquisition. They're my parents, and you love them. You did the only thing you could, but..." Grognar finally gripped her shoulder firmly. "You need to get out of Orkshire." "I know, but I'm useless. I don't have a weapon or any gear. I'm lucky to have my clothes." "Well, if you stay, you'll die," Grognar pointed out. "You'll have to figure out the details on the way. You have to make for the swamp of Rotmer. The Inquisition won't follow you there. Too many mutants live there, and it'd be suicide for them to try to pursue. But if you can stay hidden there for a while, I can help cool things off here for you. Then you can slip back through Orkshire on your way east." He glanced up towards Mariel. Titania saw his gaze and followed it to her, and her own eyes widened. "Nirvana?" "If it exists, it's where she wanted to go," Grognar added. "And if it doesn't, then you'll find someplace else to settle, I'm sure of it." "What about you?" Titania asked, her choked sobs lessening. "Oh, I sure can't leave yet. I have to ensure the Inquisition plays nice with the folks here, but maybe when you come out of Rotmer, maybe then I'll go with you." Titania looked at him darkly and placed a hand on his arm, squeezing. "Don't you dare say this is the last time. You're the only goddamn friend I have left from before the cataclysm. You're all I've got, man. You are all I've got." "Not really," Grognar chuckled. "As I recall, you're a mother now." Titania blushed and shook her head, through a shadow of a smile crossing her face. "That little idiot." saying that all of a sudden. I never asked him to, and I sure didn't want him to say that. But you wish he hadn't? Grogner asked. Titania smiled sheepishly and brushed hair out of her face while cleaning dried tears. I don't know. I don't know how to be anyone's parent, let alone a mom. Oh, that kid's something else, Grogner agreed. But so are you. And Mariel, gotta say, for the first time in 10 years, I feel like I've been part of something fun. Fun? Titania said, you think all of this was fun? Not all of it, no. Okay, sorry. Maybe that was insensitive, he admitted. Titania nodded but said nothing. I need to learn to keep my mouth shut sometimes. You meant well. Well, the road to hell is paved with... Please, shut up, Titania groaned. She stood up at last and brushed ash and dirt off of her, looking back at the small group of 3 behind her. My sword was damaged in the fire. You think you can forge me a new one? Titania asked. I'll get right to work on it, but while in Rottman, you'll still need a weapon. How about a club or something? It'll have to do. When we come back, want to meet somewhere and you can give me the sword? She asked. I'll plan on it, Ragnar answered. Good. Titania didn't care too much about the sword. More than anything, she just wanted to know Grogner had a reason to see her again. She couldn't lose anyone else now. No more friends. Not after all she'd already lost. Mom? Titania blinked a moment at Blemish's call to her and glanced at him confused. Gonna have to get used to that, aren't you? God, I don't even know how to feel about this right now, Titania groaned. Are you all right? Blemish asked, seemingly unaware of the awkwardness Titania was feeling. Yeah, I'm fine, just counting losses. And that is the end of chapter 22. We can move on to chapter 23 if you like, but first, let's hear what y'all think. Need something to drink. Titania's having a tough time of it. She sure is. Gotta feel for her. Part of what I wanted to do in writing this was I wanted to explore friendship dynamics, like connections, how we forge relationships, and that was a big part of New Epic to me. It's kind of funny. I didn't play D&D when I started writing this, but Lark told me constantly that this would be a good setup for a D&D world. And I can see that. We would just have to homebrew some of the rules. But honestly, I've enjoyed this story. Hashtag Mama Titania. I like that. Oh, boy. She's been through a lot. She sure has. She sure has. She had to ditch her parents for good. She had to say goodbye to friends. She's having a rough time of it. But all right. If y'all want, we can move on to chapter 23. Chapter 23. I wrote this one July 3rd, 2020. All right, here we go. The journey west was arduous. With Mariel in front and Blemish right behind her, Titania brought up the rear, pushing the heavy cart that Philip's wares were on. He'd agreed to show them the quickest path to Rotmer so that they could cross it into Lovenshire, though he stressed he had no interest in going inside himself. Grogner had said his farewells at Titania's burned-down cabin and assured them that they'd meet again, and every now and then Titania would glance back as if she could see him in the distance. She had a pained look on her face, and though Mariel suspected it was heartbrokenness, Philip looked unsure. Blemish, meanwhile, was happy to have Titania alive and with them, occasionally walking beside her to ask her questions or just to hold her hand. As night began to fall for the first time since they left, Blemish was looking at a long piece of paper and was etching letters onto it, practicing his handwriting. Philip watched, somewhat amused. Learning to write? Mom's been teaching me. Mom? Oh, yes, Titania. Where is she, anyway? She said she was going to the bathroom in the woods. Blemish pointed to the wooded area just off the path that had been found on the camp. Philip's smile faded and he leaned forward slightly, the campfire between them all giving his face an eerie glow. You should listen to me. I should go ahead and warn you now that you're going to need to keep an eye on Titania. I think she may be going through her mutation. Her mutation? Mariel asked. Remember how I said that ogres evolve as they train and get stronger? Well, once their skill reaches a certain level, an apex, if you will, their bodies change to accommodate. They grow taller, stronger, and in some cases have a change of skin pigmentation. Ogres have this thing that they call a blood rage. It allows them to enter... I don't know how to explain this. It allows for a higher flow of adrenaline, which can only happen after they finish their... I guess you would call it an ogre puberty. The change is painful and sporadic. It lasts in most cases just a week, but in that time, there's no telling what Titania could do. Well, why is it starting now? She was fine not long ago, Blemish asked. Philip shrugged. I have theories. Part of it could be the pain of letting go of her family completely, cutting her ties to Orkshire. Perhaps that feeling of independence has started her adult mutations, or maybe it's her new maternal instincts to take care of you, Blemish. I don't really know what caused it for sure, but I sure know the signs well enough, Philip answered. How do you know all of this? Muriel asked. I've seen it happen before. I was asked to offer treatment before to an ogre going through their mutation. It was quite horrible to witness, and more than a little dangerous. He had to be restrained quite a few times, Philip explained. I'm just saying, you need to watch her carefully. She won't hurt us, Blemish challenged angrily, not looking up from his letters. Even if she is evolving, she won't hurt us. Well, you say that. But I also know you've seen full-grown ogres and what they can do. She could be just as dangerous. I'm just saying to be careful, he growled. Blemish didn't lose his sour expression. Be careful of what? Titania asked as she walked out of the forest. Nothing, just a simple conversation, saying that the swamp is really dangerous to go into. Lots of mutants in there, after all, Philip explained. Titania nodded, grimacing and rubbing her head. You okay? Muriel asked. Just a headache. It'll pass later, Titania assured her. Blemish slid closer, smiling. It's going to be okay, Mom, Blemish assured her. Titania smiled and closed her eyes as she leaned forward, giving her head a rest. She didn't see the look of concern on everyone's faces amongst the glowing wood. Rotmer was just as intimidating as they anticipated. The massive growth of trees and the thick, boggy air seemed to stick out in contrast to the mountains and plains that lay behind them. Muriel took a few collective steps back, nervous as she beheld what seemed to be a great wall in front of them. Even Blemish looked unnerved by the sight, his hand reflexively shifting towards his blades. Titania winced more from her headaches and body cramps than she did from the sight of the forest. Since the night by the fireplace, her condition seemed to be getting worse. Her body seemed to be constantly in pain, and there were moments she would have fierce and shocking headaches that left her nearly catatonic. Blemish worried for her, but tried not to say anything. Well, here you are, the edge of the swamp of Rotmer. And I hate to say, this is where we must part ways, Philip replied. Muriel glanced back at him, not surprised, but still unhappy. Are you sure you won't stay a while? We could use the company in there. There's plenty of monsters already in there to keep you company. I'll be honest, I don't envy you, Philip grumbled. I think I can handle the monsters in there, Titania snarled, rubbing her head. Blemish touched her elbow nervously, hoping to calm her as Titania was showing her temper again. Without a weapon! Even an ogre will have trouble making it long in there, but it is the fastest way to Lovenshire, Philip explained. Where will you go, then? Blemish asked curiously. Well, Orkshire isn't after me specifically, so I'll probably stick to the northern border and head into the Valmar Republic before making my way to Serendal. I'll stay there for a few weeks to vacation, then who knows where I'll go after that. Serendal, Muriel gasped. Philip, can you look out for my mom while you're there? Philip smiled and gave a polite nod. I will keep my eyes out, he answered. As he spoke, he returned to his cart and lifted it, grunting. Ugh, damn, forgot how heavy this thing was. Thanks for pushing it all this time, Titania. Titania didn't answer, but just grunted painfully. He frowned and then turned to the back of his cart, grabbing a few vials. Look, Titania. What? She snapped. I can't stop what's happening to you, but take these. They're tonics that will help with pain. I don't have anything to trade for them. They're free, he answered firmly, shoving them in her hands. Just don't go dying in there, all right? Titania looked at the bottles and then nodded slowly. And don't drink more than one bottle in a day. It could poison you. I'll try to remember... Titania winced as she gripped her forehead with a single hand and bit her lip. She instantly opened the top of a bottle and downed it in one glorious gulp. The other three could only watch in painful sympathy. I should get going. Take care of yourselves. I'll meet you in Serendal when you get there, Philip called. How do you know we'll... Muriel started to ask before she was interrupted. You'll head there eventually, Philip chuckled. I got a feeling in my gut that says so. He turned his cart around with a grimace and started walking back down the trail, heading northeast into the mountains again. So long! As he walked off further and further away, the trio turned their attention back to the forest. Blemish, can you tell which way is west once we go in? I'm trained in how to find my way in the dark, Blemish answered flatly. Then we're trusting you here, Titania added, walking to the embrace of the mighty trees. Let's get going. The swamp was nothing short of nightmarish. Day and night were so closely intertwined that it was difficult to tell the two apart at times. The bleak fog of the swamp blocked out most direct sunlight, making everything here an odd, dim hue. The trees were gnarled and twisted, reaching and clutching at any open space they could. obscuring even more light that could flow into the bog. The air was thick with moisture, and the ground was soupy in parts, with marshy water and oozing sludge in other places. There were occasional pockets of hot geysers that spewed out burning hot steam, which was likely a result of some kind of geothermic phenomena left behind by the cataclysm. Blemish never took his hand far away from his swords, and more than once he'd yank out his blades in preparation for an attack, but only to find the startling noise was just a bird or a croaking bog toad. But as night fell, things became steadily more haunting. The fireflies that normally would entrance the eye now seemed like warding eyes that glowed in the night, gazing upon the three trespassers. The sounds of the bog now felt more encompassing and threatening, as the sounds could not be seen, and there were moments where Mariel could make out large shadows moving in the mist. "So, you ever been here before, Blemish?" Mariel asked. "This is unholy ground. No one from the Inquisition comes here by choice," he muttered. "So what kind of things live here?" "The Inquisition teaches that all who become other races in the Cataclysm were forced to become the sin that their heart hid. Those who were prideful became elves, those who were greedy became dwarves, those who were wrathful became ogres. You understand." "Yes, I do. But what about here?" "Well, some humans that were so sinful and depraved that they didn't become another race simply became monstrous abominations, tainted by demonic influence and made mindless and cruel with a taste for flesh. These mutants are the seed of evil and are detested more than any other creature." As he spoke, the sound of lowing and growling in the dark could be heard, making them both fall silent. As it settled down, Blemish spoke again. "This swamp is teeming with them." "But why haven't they attacked us yet?" Mariel asked. "Because of Mom, I think. She's an intimidating presence." The two glanced back at Titania, who was lying on a cot, her face twisted in pain, as the medicine had done little to make her feel better. She'd struggled not to complain or moan as they'd wandered through the forest, but her temper was short, and she was always gnashing her teeth. "She's getting worse. I don't know how to help her," Blemish whispered. "She's been like this for 2 days, right? Well, just 4 more to go, and she'll be okay, right?" Blemish nodded back and then sat down by her makeshift tent in case it rained, though considering the thickness of the tree covering, he wondered if rain would even be able to reach them. He surmised it could, but there was no way of knowing. "I'll keep watch if you want to sleep," Blemish muttered. "Like anyone could sleep in a place like this?" Mariel giggled. Blemish shrugged. "Suit yourself. But if you're tired tomorrow, we'll be slower." "I'm not sure it's a good idea to take a pissed off Titania into Lovenshire with all those halflings running around," Mariel pointed out. "Then I'll stay in the swamp with her until she's better, and you can wait on us. Either way, we can't stay here too long," Blemish replied. Mariel glanced at Blemish as she lay down, unable to read through his mask. "You really do love her, don't you?" Mariel asked. Blemish gave a slow but heartfelt nod. "Even though she's an ogre and used to be a guy?" "None of that matters to me," Blemish snapped. "It doesn't? Lots of people changed like that because of the Cataclysm, and I don't care that she's an ogre. She took care of me, she saved me, and that's what a mother does, right?" There was a weight in Blemish's voice that Mariel felt carry to her heart. She winced as she considered her own mother, thinking about where she was now. "Right," they said no more, and Mariel found herself drifting off to sleep despite her concerns and fears. A loud scream woke Blemish with a start. When he had fallen asleep, he looked around for the sound of the screaming and saw Mariel cowering behind the tent, looking over at the far-off tree. Blemish turned his eyes to see as well. It was Titania, striking and hitting the tree with her fists, her knees, even her forehead, slamming her horn into it and leaving massive wounds in the bark. She was roaring like a beast and slamming herself against it furiously. "Mom!" Blemish cried, running to her. She didn't stop for him, but screamed all the louder. "My name is David!" she screamed. "Kill me!" She threw herself down, clawing at her body in agony, and then Blemish cried out in horror, grabbing his swords. Titania's skin was turning red, practically glowing, pulsating. Steam was hissing out of the pores of her skin like her very blood was boiling. He could hear her heart pounding rapidly in her chest, and her horn, which had once been a relatively normal-sized horn for an ogre, was now visibly sharper and elongated. She was in the throes of a blood rage, an ogre's blood rage. She really was going through her evolution. There was no denying that. Blood from her slamming her face into a tree was seeping down her face, and the rapid and destructive pounding of her heart was making her blood pump uncontrollably. She roared again, screaming and ripping her clothes to pieces, struggling to contain her agony. "Mom, stop it! Don't call me that!" she screamed, lashing out and striking Blemish across the head, sending him sprawling backwards. "I'm no one's mom! I'm human! I'm a man! I'm not some demon freak! I'm not a freak! It hurts! Make it stop!" Blemish felt blood dripping from his face from where she hit him. He'd managed to evade the initial strike, but she just glanced at him. If she could draw blood that easily with just a glancing blow, there was no telling what she could have done if she'd fully connected. But she didn't seem cognizant of her actions. She was lost in a world of pain and anguish, screaming for someone to end her, to just kill her. How could Blemish watch her go through this for 3 more days? He dared to move closer. Mom, you need to calm down. I said, stop calling me that! She swung her fist out, but this time Blemish swung his body clear, drawing his swords fast and reflexively. Titania whirled on him, and in her eyes was the same raging fury that Blemish had seen in so many other ogres before. He readied himself, and then everything seemed to suddenly stop. Titania's body was no longer glowing like it was. Her heart was slowing down, and her eyes were starting to return to their normal hue, the steam fading away as well. She was leaving the rage state, but her eyes were now filled with emotion. What did I just do? She saw Blemish standing there, swords drawn. She saw Mariel hiding, tears building in her eyes. She then saw the scratches and bruises she'd given herself, and the shredded remains of what used to be her clothing laying in pieces on the ground. The destructive blows she dealt to the large tree near their camp. She began to understand what must have happened, what she'd been reduced to. No. Mom, it's all right. No, it's not, Titania whimpered back away. I could have killed you. It wasn't your fault, Blemish tried to reason, though his swords in his hands didn't leave him with a convincing argument. Tanya shook her head, tears in her eyes, as she was now more terrified of herself than before. I'm a monster. I'm a demon. She turned without another word and sprinted into the swamp. Mom! Mom, wait! Blemish cried, starting to chase after her, and then stopping when he heard the squeak of apprehension from Mariel. If he ran after her, Mariel would be all alone, and he found he couldn't up and leave her alone like that. He wouldn't forgive himself, and neither would Titania. He stayed and fell to his knees in anguish. Mom. And with the disappearance of the ogress, Mariel and Blemish were now truly alone in the fogs of Rotmer. And that is chapter 23. Let me take a drink real quick. I needed that. Awesome. There we go. All right. Well, that was chapter 23. We'll read chapter 24, and then we'll see if we want to take a break from New Epoch for a little bit to read something else. You know when I first started reading this? I think I started on the very first Raven's Roost reading stream, so I think you can catch it there. So what I wanted to kind of capture here was Titania not only losing it, but Blemish coming to terms with what his perceived mother is becoming. It's very easy to care and love someone when they're easy to deal with and easy to manage. But what about when they're worked up, when they're dangerous, when they're not thinking straight? You know, that's a different story entirely. All right, well, we will read chapter 24 now, and then we might take a break. We'll see. All right. This one was written July 20th, 2020. Mariel said nothing as Blemish sat down beside her. Their solitude was ceaseless, and the pain seemed to last forever. Blemish rubbed his aching side and looked down at his feet in disdain. Mariel didn't know what to say to him or how to try and console him. Frankly, she was having enough trouble doing that to herself. The gasping and gnarling hands of the swamp reached out hungrily towards them as if to eat them alive, and only the light of the campfire seemed to provide any degree of comfort. Neither could sleep that evening as they had walked the entire day. Titania was nowhere to be found as they walked and slogged through the bog, though there were traces of her. On a few occasions, Mariel and Blemish stumbled across a beast or a deer that had been torn apart but not eaten, like it had merely gotten in the path of a rampaging animal. and Blemish would wrinkle his nose and look away, finding the insinuation of the culprit distasteful. He didn't want to admit what his mother was becoming, and Mariel felt more and more certain that Blemish was not only starting to blame himself for Titania fleeing, but also for what she was. As they sat alone and together, the howl of wargs and the moaning of owls haunted the evening darkness. With every tiny crackle of the meager fire, Blemish's scowl deepened. The silence was killing Mariel, and she took out her lute. Blemish's eyes eyed her out of the corner of his eye, slowly leaning his head into his folded arms, tucking his knees up to rest both of them. Mariel started to strum the lute slowly, just thinking of a simple tune. The forest sounds seemed to ebb away with her playing. Blemish didn't lose his concentrated frown. "So, where did you learn to play?" Blemish asked. Mariel didn't stop strumming, but she went slower. "I don't know, really," she answered. "A year after the cataclysm, my family and I were hiding in a shop, just from some looters and thugs who were still panicking over the changes. I found a lute on the ground and took it with me. I started picking at it for a few days and found I liked it." "Did you play before the cataclysm?" "No. Honestly, I had other things on my mind then." "You?" Mariel asked. "I don't know how to play anything," Blemish answered curtly. "No," Mariel giggled. "I mean, what did you do before the cataclysm?" Blemish looked at Mariel a moment and then back to the fire. "I don't remember much," he admitted. "I'm like Grogner. I advanced in age thanks to the cataclysm's changes. I look like I'm older than I actually am, so I was 5 years old when the cataclysm hit." "So you're only 15 years old?" "Something like that," Blemish answered honestly. "But I don't look it, right?" "No, you honestly don't, but, I mean, your elf blood keeps you somewhat youthful, right?" Mariel asked. Blemish didn't respond to that, so Mariel gave a nervous grunt and then stopped playing. "So, if you don't mind my asking, what do you remember?" Blemish sighed and looked down at the fire. "I don't remember my parents all that much, but I know that they loved me. I remember that my favorite food was beef and macaroni. I didn't know how it was made, but Mom would cook it when I was sad or hurt, and it made me happy," Blemish admitted. "But when the cataclysm hit, I didn't really understand it. Then we changed. Dad became an elf, Mom stayed human." "And you became a half-elf?" Mariel asked. Blemish nodded in his response. Mariel fell silent again to let him continue. "I also aged up physically by 10 years. I was a 5-year-old kid in a teenage body, and I didn't understand it. My parents didn't either, but they tried to handle it." Blemish kicked the ground slowly, letting the dirt turn and move under his boot. "We tried to share meals when we could, but I couldn't eat beef and macaroni anymore." "It was your favorite, though," Mariel argued. "Why not?" "Because it never satisfied me anymore," Blemish grumbled. "I would still be hungry, and there wasn't enough left in those little cans. Mom wouldn't admit it to me, and I didn't get it at the time. But as I grew and got older, I found out why she didn't buy more." Mariel didn't need to finish that. She knew exactly what he was referring to. When the cataclysm hit, the first 2 years were hell as social hierarchies were formed, and the strong trampled the weak. People killed their neighbors and looted what they wanted. Money was meaningless, and reason was for the incapable. With a family comprised of a human woman and an elf father with no fighting skill to speak of, they had no chance of getting enough food, especially a specific kind that Blemish liked. Mariel slid a little closer, partly to stay warmer near the fire, but also to see how Blemish's face was looking. Behind his mask, it was hard to tell, but she could feel pain in his voice, and a sense of frustration climbing. "What happened to them? How did you end up with the Inquisition?" Mariel finally asked, unable to restrain the curiosity. "I don't want to talk about that. Not right now," Blemish hissed dangerously. While he wasn't threatening her, Mariel felt the anger in his words and backed off. She'd already dug a little deeper into Blemish than she probably intended, and now was going too far in. Their conversation was interrupted, though, by a low growl as a figure wandered out of the shadows of the forest. Blemish drew his swords and stood up fast, glaring at it. It was walking on all fours, fangs stained with blood and eyes with red fury. Its fur was matted to its body from moisture and dried juices from carcasses. It looked like a large dog with blackened fur, but Blemish knew better. Some animals during the cataclysm mutated into new creatures and monsters. Some dogs evolved into wargs or dire wolves, and that's precisely what he was looking at. Judging from the glare in its eye, this canine was hungry, and without Titania's intimidating presence to keep it at bay, it felt it might have a chance to snare an easy meal. Mariel backed away to get between Blemish and the warg. The beast snarled hungrily, drool running from its maw. "Blemish, can you kill it?" "This one? Yes. Its friends, not so sure." As if on cue, 3 more wargs stalked their way out of the shadows, joining their slobbering, hungry friend. Muriel jumped back in fright as Loomis drew his second sword. Should we run? She asked. No point in it. We'd be run down before we got far enough. Just stay back and leave this to me. Blemish made a feint forward, and the warg close to him jumped back in expectation, while another that flanked his side moved in fast. Blemish spun and plunged his short sword into its jaw, causing the beast to yelp and fall back. But just as it retreated, two others charged. Blemish danced around them and swung his sword up and into the chest of the nearest attacker. Blood splattered the ground as the warg fell, its fellow darting around the body and making a lunge at Blemish's side. Blemish slashed just shy of the monster and used his knee to hit the warg's throat, knocking it back a few feet. They were more cautious now, frightened of what Blemish could do. One dared to snap at him, and Blemish replied by slashing it across the eye. The beast howled and turned, fleeing back into the forest. The others, not willing to risk any more injuries, started to back away as well. They'd wait a while, at least until the duo fell asleep. Blemish lowered his weapons and resheathed them, pleased that the fight was over for now. You did it, Muriel cried. You really beat them. Well, that wasn't the whole pack, Blemish answered. Wargs hunt in larger hunting groups. Those four were just scouts. They'll be stalking us and waiting for us to sleep. Then they'll attack. What? You mean there's more of them? And worse things than wargs live here, Blemish nodded. Muriel shivered involuntarily as mental thoughts and images of the worst monsters in the bog could be. Okay, how far until we get out of here? I don't want to be here anymore, she whispered. If I'm right, then I think we'll be in Lovenshire in maybe 5 days, Blemish answered. I'll get you there. But I can't go with you. Why not? Muriel asked. Because Mom is still here, Blemish answered. And I'm going to find her. Well, what if she... Muriel froze up a moment as Blemish cleansed blood off of his swords. What if she doesn't want to be found, Blemish? Then I'll stay here indefinitely, he answered. Muriel looked at Blemish a long moment and shook her head. Blemish, that's just crazy. I couldn't imagine staying here so long. It's too dangerous, Muriel explained. Blemish didn't answer that, but just sat back down by the fire, staring down at it as if nothing had happened. After a moment, he spoke. Killing monsters is what I've had to do for a long time. I'm used to it, he answered. But waiting on Titania Fields, I lost one mom already, Blemish snapped back. And I won't lose another one. And that was chapter 24. Well, let me know what you guys think. I'm going to take a quick drink. And we'll switch to something else. If and y'all want to, of course. Got other stories I could read. Alright, we've got other stories that we can read while we take a break from New Epic. I could read a short story again. I'll need to pick the short story. I could read some more of Monster Club since we started that last time. I could read Shogun of Crime. I could read Everyday Life with Raptors. I know Hannah might find that interesting. Yeah, I've got some stuff I could read. What do you guys think? Got any new Eden? No, I've read all of the Edenite Chronicles that I have right now. So I have read you all of those. Okay, I've got 2 votes for Monster Club. Okay. Monster Club or Raptors? Monster Club? Okay, we will do Monster Club then. Let me pull it up. Monster Club. Here we go. We read up to chapter 3, I think. Okay. Let's see. Chapter 3. Monster Club chapter 3. Hannah, Raptors. Oh, lots of people interested in Raptors, huh? Well, tell you what I might do is... that might be the last thing I read tonight. I might read the first chapter of Everyday Life with Raptors before we leave tonight. Alright, Monster Club first. and then we will take a look at raptors, okay? Okay. So, Monster Club Chapter 3. I wrote this January 9th, 2013. Here we go. Ready? Monster Club Chapter 3. All right, well, we've done enough standing around, Solomon said firmly. The sun will be coming up soon, and we have work to do. The house suddenly seemed to come alive as everyone started rushing off to different locations. The only one who seemed to remain behind was Asher. Abraham watched them all go and looked back at Solomon and Asher. Where is everyone going? Abraham asked. To do their jobs, Solomon explained. This house is not just my home anymore, it's theirs as well. As residents here, they have to do their part to take care of it. Just because it's a haunted house doesn't mean it needs to look like one. Abraham smiled and nodded. It made sense in a strange way. They were monsters, but that didn't necessarily mean that they enjoyed the unpleasant and the ugly. Solomon pointed outside and indicated the lake and backyard. Some of them do yard work, like Tamil. Others do work to benefit the rest of us, like Sarah. And others, like Asher here, do what they can to keep the house safe. Okay, so what do you do? Abraham asked. Solomon shook his head sadly. Well, my soul is bound to this house. It's where I'll spend the rest of my time on this earth. If anything ever happened to it, my spirit couldn't stay connected. So my job is simply to keep this house safe and standing. I spread rumors that this house is haunted to keep pestering people away from it. Solomon placed his hand on the wall and ran his fingers along it tenderly. It's all that I really can do, after all. Abraham cocked his head to the side in confusion. Noticing his expression, Solomon laughed. Okay, time for your first lesson about monsters. Solomon sat down on the table and sighed. Ghosts are the souls of human beings who either have a strong connection to this mortal world or had some form of unfinished or unresolved business. Abraham suddenly gasped in understanding. Oh, I get it. So this house, it's your connection. Solomon nodded kindly. He then turned to Asher, his face going slightly dark. Asher, I assume that you've been out the last few nights? He asked. Asher nodded darkly, not saying a word. Solomon sighed in frustration. That was foolish, boy. You should have come back sooner. I mean, what with a storm like that? Sorry, Asher muttered. Solomon waved the apology aside. And what did you find? Asher's face fell, and he couldn't look Solomon in the eyes. Sorry, the storm was too strong. I lost your trail. Solomon sighed again and shook his head. Abraham felt incredibly lost. Trail? Who are you looking for? He asked. Solomon and Asher turned to look at him as if just noticing him. Oh, it's nothing to worry about, Abraham, Solomon said warmly, trying to pretend like nothing had been said. Anyway, I'm sure you must be exhausted. Why don't you let Asher show you to your room so that you can get some rest? No, I'm fine, Abraham said quickly. The truth was that with all that had happened, he was beyond exhausted, but he was so anxious to learn more and find out more about this new family of his that he couldn't help but want to stay up and see more. If everyone else here has a job, then give me one as well. I'll help in any way I can. Solomon looked Abraham over and grinned. Well, I still say you need your rest, but if you insist, I won't stop you. He stood up and looked up the stairs. First, I want you to go up with Asher so he can show you your room and get you situated. While you do that, I'll start thinking about what you can do. Abraham smiled nervously and turned to Asher. Asher nodded and started walking up the stairs. Come with me, Asher said calmly. Abraham turned and took off after Asher, who was moving up the stairs steadily. Oh, and Asher! Asher stopped and turned to face Solomon, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at him with understanding and reassuring eyes. Do get some rest. I know you're doing everything you can, son. Asher nodded, but he didn't smile back. Instead, he turned and kept marching up the stairs with Abraham close on his heels. Oh, sorry that we haven't been formally introduced, Asher said, turning to shake his hand. The name's Asher. Abraham shook his hand and took it kindly. Abraham followed up to the top of the stairs as Asher turned to point to the far door on the right. That door over there is your room. It's big enough, and I'm sure that you'll find it very roomy. If you need anything, just give a shout. Abraham nodded, but there was something eating at his mind. Something he was dying to know. Sorry, but can I ask you a question? Asher suddenly smirked and gave a friendly grin. Don't worry. I won't feed on you while you're here. Abraham's eyes widened. Wait! You're a vampire? Asher smiled, and Abraham suddenly noticed a pair of extremely sharp and pointed canine teeth in Asher's mouth. You catch on quick, Asher said with a chuckle. Yeah, I'm a vampire. Also, the sun is coming up, and I need to get some shut-eye. Abraham suddenly took a step forward. Wait, Abraham said. I have more questions. Asher sighed and gave Abraham a tired glare. You'll be staying here for a while. We have a long time to get to know one another, but I suppose I can answer maybe 2 more questions. Make them quick, please. Abraham stopped and thought his next few words over carefully. It's not very often that one can interview with an actual vampire, and here he was, able to speak to one face to face. Who is it that you're looking for? Abraham asked quickly. Asher gave a dark look to Abraham and looked away. A friend, Asher muttered. I'd rather not talk about it right now. No offense, you're still kind of new here. Abraham instantly regretted the question. What about your last question? Abraham looked carefully at Asher and then noticed something odd around his neck. A very strange necklace, especially considering who was wearing it. You're a vampire, he said carefully. So, why are you wearing a cross necklace? Asher looked down and stared at the small cross around his neck. I mean, maybe I was wrong, but I thought that crosses repelled vampires. Asher grinned and touched the cross. Yeah, they do, Asher said mysteriously. But this was a gift from my mother. I've been wearing it since before I became a vampire, so I've built up a resistance to the cross. I'm the world's only Christian vampire, I guess. He then opened up the door crossing the stairs and waved Abraham towards his room. Before he did, though, he turned to the other end of the hall. Oh, right. Hey, Sarah! From her room, Sarah's head came poking out from behind her door. She gave a big smile and waved. Yes, Asher? She asked. Would you help Abraham here get settled in his new room? I'm really exhausted. Sarah placed her hands on her hips and gave Asher a very accusing glance. Well, no wonder. The sun is coming up. You should have been in bed an hour ago. I'll take care of Abraham. You get some rest. Asher chuckled and winked at Abraham. You're in good hands, kid. He then walked into his room and closed the door. As he did, Sarah came scuttling out with her long 8 legs and quickly walked past Abraham towards the room. She opened up the door to show Abraham inside. The bed was enormous, probably a king-sized. There was more than enough room for him. A large window to the far side of the room allowed light to pour in. There was a dresser next to the door that was covered in dust, as if it had never been used. It was a very impressive room, all things considered. This is your room, Sarah explained. It was actually Solomon's before he died, and after that we gave it to Katie, and at the mention of that name, Sarah's face suddenly fell and she went silent. Katie? Abraham asked. Suddenly it clicked. He put it together. That's who Asher's been looking for, isn't it? Sarah didn't look up at Abraham, but she nodded her head yes. Who was she, or what was she? She was a friend, Sarah said. About a week ago, they took her. As she said those words, a chill seemed to run through her. She wrapped her arms around herself and turned away as if afraid. Sorry, but who took her? Abraham asked. Sarah shook her head in response and wanted to say anything else. Anyway, Sarah said, trying to force a smile, is there anything else I can get you for your room? Anything at all? You want some webs put up in the... no, that's right, you don't like webs, sorry. Abraham shook his head. No, but I want to ask some questions. Sarah nodded hesitantly. Abraham wanted to know more about this Katie person, but he knew that Sarah probably didn't want to continue discussing the subject. What's your job around here? Abraham asked, trying to change the subject. Sarah brightened up at that question. Oh, I make money for us, she grinned and folded her arms. I use my silk to sew and make clothing, and then I give my clothing to Michelle to sell at the local stores. She then looked at Abraham and began picking at his jacket and his shirt. And I think I better make you some new threads, she cried. Abraham blushed and shook her head. Hey, no, that's not necessary. But before he could stop her, Sarah had pulled out some measuring tape and was measuring Abraham's arms and body length. Well, hold still. I need to get your measurements. Abraham quickly learned that Sarah's legs could be used for more than just walking. As her arms were holding the measuring tape, her front 2 legs could pull on the bottom of his jacket to stretch it out and give her a more accurate measurement. Her hind legs had reached up behind her abdomen and were extracting a long thread of silk from her rear end. The silk was pure white and it looked moist. She picked it up and held it out like she had done to the measuring tape. Right, this should do. She then smiled and stepped back towards the door. I'll get started right away. Abraham nodded in defeat, knowing that she would make him a new outfit whether he wanted her to or not. Thanks, Sarah, he said. Sarah beamed and then hurried out the door. Abraham turned back to look at his room. Questions were still filling his mind. He couldn't help but wonder what on earth could have happened to this Katie person that could cause Sarah and Asher so much distress. Who was she? Who had taken her? So many thoughts and puzzles floated around in his head. However, he knew that the only way to get any answers was to keep digging, and he needed to find some work to do around the house. Without a word, he ran out of his room, down the steps, and into the kitchen to find Solomon. Ah, well, what do you think about your new room? Solomon asked. Abraham smiled back. It's very nice. I like it. Solomon nodded. I had a feeling that you would. Now, what brings you down here? I still want to help out, Abraham reminded him. Solomon grinned and looked after him carefully. Anything specific you want to do? Abraham shrugged. Well, I guess I could help the others with their jobs. I could always help dust around the house, or maybe pull weeds, or... Abraham saw his chance and he took it. Maybe I could help find Katie. At the mention of her name, a shadow passed over Solomon's face as he glanced up at Abraham dangerously. And how do you know about her? Abraham backed away cautiously, realizing he was on thin ice now. I just heard her name mentioned somewhere. Solomon grunted disapprovingly. Sarah, then, he growled. It was clear there was no hiding anything from the old ghost. Abraham built up his courage and pressed on. I just want to know what happened to her. Solomon gave him a cold glare and then looked down. Well, frankly, we don't know, Solomon admitted. She went missing about a week ago. And I'm sure you've pieced together that she was one of us, so her going missing was quite a hard blow to everyone. Sarah said that someone took her. Solomon shook his head. We have no proof of that, but... Yes, I believe that Sarah is correct. They did take her. Solomon felt his heart pound faster. He moved closer and pressed a little harder. Who were they? Why did they take her? Enough! Solomon barked. Abraham backed away from him. He'd gone too far. The old ghost looked angry, but it wasn't anger behind his eyes, just an intense sadness. A look of hopelessness. Abraham, listen to me carefully, Solomon said quietly. People will always fear things that they don't understand. People like us, what humans would dub as monsters or creatures, will never be understood and probably never be accepted. And when humans fear something, there will be certain humans who will do everything in their power to destroy it. So you think humans came for Katie? Solomon shook his head. It's not that simple, I'm afraid. If it were just humans, then Katie could have taken care of herself. I believe it was something worse. Solomon's voice sounded unbelievably sad and hurt as he spoke. What do you think it was? Abraham asked. Whatever it was, you clearly think that she's alive, otherwise you wouldn't be trying so hard to find her. Abraham stood up and tried to look brave. I'll help you find her. Solomon gave a weak grin. You're brave, and I appreciate it, but you're also foolish. This enemy's not one you can face. Leave that business to Asher. If anyone can find Katie, he can. Abraham opened his mouth to protest, but Solomon held up his hand. This conversation is over, he said firmly. I want you to go and find Calypso by the lake. I believe that she could use your help. Now go, please. Abraham bowed his head, knowing that he was beat, and walked toward the porch door. Oh, and Abraham turned to face Solomon, who was staring at him with a very serious gaze. This business about Katie ends here. Please don't bring it up again. Abraham nodded obediently and walked out the door. However, he knew deep down that this was far from over. He was going to find out more about this, but for now he would let his questions rest as he looked outside to see the lake. With the rain finally past, the grass and grounds looked rather lovely. There was a misty feeling about the area, and the trees dripped water delicately. The lake looked slightly larger now, and the air was clear. The leaves on the ground were gorgeous as their soaked frames carpeted the earth. The sight of birds in the sky calling after the storm was a welcome sight. Abraham pulled himself together and ran down to the grass. As he rushed to the lake, he saw a figure sitting on a rock just next to the water. He recognized her silvery blue hair and tinted blue skin. Her legs swung back and forth merrily as she fiddled with something in her hands. He walked quietly over to her until he was a few yards away. Hey, Calypso. The reaction that he got was not what he expected. Eep! Calypso suddenly dropped what she was holding to the ground in fright and lost her balance on the rock, tumbling backwards into the lake water with a loud splash. Abraham had to keep himself from laughing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, he laughed. Calypso looked around nervously, and when her eyes fell on Abraham, she backed away quickly. I wasn't making anything for Asher. I wasn't doing anything, I swear. Abraham couldn't help himself and burst out laughing. Hey, calm down. I was just coming to say hello. He looked down to see the object she had dropped. He carefully picked it up and rubbed the mud and dirt off of it. It was some kind of very fancy bracelet. It looked like it was made of small reed shells, seeds, and stones. The design was very pretty and really well made. He walked over and held out his hand for her to take so he could pull her to her feet. Here, let me help you. Just as he did, he saw something sweeping out of the water up and down. He looked at it and gasped. Stretching all the way from Calypso's waistline where her legs should have been was a long and beautiful fishtail. Elegant and gorgeous, the scales on it reflected the light of the sun and made her look as if she were dazzling or glowing. Abraham backed away in stunned amazement. You're a what? Calypso asked. You're a mermaid! Abraham cried. And that is chapter 3 of Monster Club. Hooray! Let me get a drink real fast. I think we got enough time to read one more chapter of Monster Club if you like. And then we will do a chapter of the Raptors. You should really stop acting surprised at the girls. Well, he's not used to what kind of things he can see from monsters yet. I was thinking of a siren, not a mermaid, so what's the difference? Oh, actually, believe it or not, that will be explained later, I think, in the next chapter. So you'll actually get to hear in the next chapter the difference between a siren and a mermaid. Abraham is a dense harem protagonist. Yeah, he kind of is. He kind of is. Anyway. Also, I'm sorry if I made you lose focus with the comments. It only happened once. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Just keep it to a minimum. Hannah will be keeping track of that kind of stuff. Right, Hannah? Anyway, let's read chapter 4 so that we have time to get through with it and then move on to the Raptors chapter. This one, chapter 4, was written January 24th, 2013. Well, of course I'm a mermaid, silly, Calypso said with a laugh. She flicked her tail up and down playfully, showing him that there was no trickery or fooling around here. She was the genuine article, a real mermaid. Abraham could only stare in wonder at her. He had always thought them a myth, and he certainly never would have classified them as a monster. That's amazing, Abraham exclaimed. Calypso blushed. I mean, after all that you've seen today, is this really so surprising? She asked. Abraham nodded. Oh, well, I mean, you're not like the others. I mean, mermaids aren't monsters. They're... Calypso suddenly gave him a very cold look. They aren't any more monsters than I am, she said. We aren't monsters. None of us are. Not me or anyone else in the club. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sound rude. And Abraham gasped. No, I'm the one who might have sounded rude, he admitted. Calypso sighed and pulled herself back up the rock, sunning herself. Abraham looked over her and blushed. She was, in a word, gorgeous. But, I mean, how did you have legs earlier? I didn't think mermaids could grow legs. Calypso grinned and turned to face Abraham. Well, a long time ago, we mermaids went by another name, Calypso explained. Sailors called us sirens. We couldn't leave the ocean, so if we wanted supplies or cargo from the land, we sat upon rocks and waited for ships to come by. And we would sing hypnotic songs to bring them crashing into the rocks. And then we took what we wanted. And those were darker days. She then waved her fins a little, let them sparkle. However, as time went on, humans stopped relying on ships to go places, and they started using planes and stronger vessels. Our numbers were dwindling, and my kind began to die out, so we had to learn to evolve or die. Soon my kind became known as mermaids, and we were able to grow legs and walk on land like humans. Abraham listened to her with complete attention, soaking in every word that she said. However, our legs return to fins when we get wet. Why? Abraham asked. Why do you sweat? Calypso countered. It's an automatic response that your body goes through when you feel too hot. To allow ourselves to more easily swim, our body automatically responds to getting wet. Abraham kind of understood this. That makes some sense, Abraham said. Calypso smiled. You see, once you understand something and know the facts behind it, you can separate the fact from the fiction, and monsters from normal things. Abraham suddenly looked at his hand and realized he was still holding the red bracelet. Oh, this is yours, right? He held out the jewelry and Calypso suddenly blushed a deep shade of red. She took it quickly from his hands and cradled the item carefully. Yes, no, not exactly, she stammered. It seemed like she suddenly became a lot more nervous and shy. It's not for me. It's, oh. Abraham laughed and walked closely. Is it for Asher? Calypso let out a shriek and placed her hand over Abraham's mouth. Please don't tell anyone. I don't want him to find out. Abraham shook his head quickly, assuring her that he wouldn't tell anyone. She let go of his mouth and looked down at the bracelet sadly. He's going back out tonight, and I don't know how long it'll be before I see him again, so... Calypso pulled the bracelet to her chest and held it tight, as if she could somehow hug Asher through it. I get so worried about him when he goes off. Does he leave often? Abraham asked. She nodded. He's a vampire. Every night he goes out to feed and keep watch for any sign of danger. I mean, that's his job, after all, to keep watch after dark. Calypso then looked out over the lake, a look of sorrow etched across her lovely face. But he's never left for days at a time before, not since. Since Katie was taken. Calypso choked a little bit and turned away from Abraham, trying not to look at him. She looked so upset and somewhat scared. What had spooked her? Katie was taken, yes. That was the start. Katie was taken about a week ago, right? So, Asher's been gone for a week? Abraham asked. Calypso didn't respond at first, but slowly nodded. We were beginning to think he'd been taken too, Calypso whispered tearfully. Then he showed up, and I was so happy. This whole business was starting to get really interesting to Abraham. What was it that everyone's so nervous? What was keeping them all so quiet and so fearful? What could have taken a monster away and then avoid a vampire for a whole week? It was something he just needed to know. Calypso, what do you think took Katie? Calypso shivered and shook her head. I don't know, she muttered. Anyway, I need to get back to work. She leaped into the water and started to swim off. Wait! Abraham called. Calypso stopped, her head still out of the water. She turned to look up at Abraham. Abraham fell to his knees and folded his hands pleadingly. Please, I swear I'll never ask again, but I just have to know. What do you think took her? What's got everyone so afraid? Calypso paused and gave a very scared and very upset stare. But then she sighed and looked down at the murky depths of the lake. Humans are hypocritical creatures, Calypso muttered darkly. I don't understand. They long to be rid of that which is inhuman and supernatural, but they aren't afraid to employ such things themselves, Calypso hissed. She then looked up, a tear rolling down her face. I have to go, Abraham. I'm sorry. She then turned back into the water without looking back. Damn it, Abraham muttered. This was driving him nuts. Abraham turned back towards the yard and looked around. There was little to do or see out here, and his own curiosity was killing him. What now? Suddenly there was a crash at the yard. It sounded like something had fallen. Abraham jumped to his feet and ran to the sound of the crash as fast as he could. He darted at the yard as fast as his legs would carry him. As he got further up the hill, he saw a figure leaning over a pile of dirt and clay. It was small and covered in bandages. Tamil? Abraham called out. The mummy looked up from where he was kneeling and looked up in Abraham's direction. Who is there? He called back. Abraham stopped in his tracks and gave a confused look. Tamil, it's me. Tamil's face contorted with a lack of understanding. Could he really not figure it out? It's Abraham. Tamil suddenly beamed. Oh, I am sorry, Tamil cried. I did not recognize your voice, my friend. Abraham kneeled down next to Tamil and waved his hand in front of his face. Come on, man, you saw me this morning. Suddenly Tamil's face fell and he looked away. Actually, I did not look at you this morning. I am blind. Abraham suddenly gasped and blushed. How had he not realized it before? That was the reason for his pale eyes, and why he never looked him in the face. It's because he wasn't able to see. Tamil, I'm sorry, I didn't know, Abraham said apologetically. Tamil smiled and waved at his side. No, it's fine, Tamil said slowly. I am used to it now. He looked back over the pile of dirt and got back to digging it up. Abraham looked down at her curiously. What are you doing? Abraham asked. I'm fertilizing the ground, Tamil explained. Tamil grinned and then stuck his arm into the hole I dug in the dirt. Abraham watched to see what would happen, but nothing seemed to be going on. Tamil grinned again and used his free hand to brush his hair back. How are you? My body is fertilizing it, Tamil explained further. Abraham looked back in shock and mortification. That's nasty! Tamil chuckled, continued what he was doing. If you think about it, I'm nothing more than walking fertilizer. My job is to care for the garden, Tamil laughed. So what are you doing? Abraham looked away from the hole and tried to focus on anything else other than what Tamil was doing. I'm looking for something to do, like a job of some kind, Abraham answered. I see, Tamil said. Well, you can pull some weeds for me. Abraham nodded his reply and walked over to the other side of the flower bed. He knelt down and began grabbing hold of some small green weeds, yanking them up carefully from the ground. You have not asked me anything, by the way, Tamil said mysteriously. Abraham looked up at Tamil questioningly. Asked you what? Tamil looked up at Abraham, and Abraham was genuinely spooked by his ghostly pale eyes. About Katie, Tamil said darkly. Abraham dropped his handful of weeds on the ground and stared at Tamil. How did you? Been listening, Tamil answered. No, you have asked the others. Abraham turned to face Tamil and placed his knee into the ground, waiting for Tamil to continue. And? Abraham pressed. Tamil shook his head. I answer one question about Katie, if you answer one question of mine, Tamil said. Abraham shrugged and nodded his head. Tamil leaned back and stared off into space, a serious look on it. What do you remember about your family? Tamil asked. Abraham stared for a moment, a little confused. Well, I can't remember very much. I know that my mom was very pretty, and I'm pretty sure that my dad was a lawyer or something. They love you? Tamil urged. Abraham couldn't help but notice there was a hint of sadness in his voice. Abraham nodded. I mean, yeah, of course. What does that feel like, Abraham? Abraham just stared at Tamil with a questioning glance. What was this? Where was Tamil coming from? At first, Tamil thought he was joking or trying to sound clever, or maybe his English was so bad and he was just misspeaking. But there was a look of such sadness and urgency in his tired face that Abraham somehow knew there was no mistake. Tamil had meant what he said. Well, I'm not sure how to describe it, Abraham said. It's a very warm feeling, I guess. When you love someone, you miss that person when they aren't around, and you think about them all the time. You do anything for them. Abraham paused and watched. Tamil was shaking slightly. His body was bent over and he was trembling. Tamil, are you okay? Tamil nodded and looked up, forcing a smile. Yes, my friend, I am fine. Tamil went back to fertilizing and planting herbs and flowers, but his face still showed an aura of disappointment and sadness. Was distracted. Abraham leaned back and looked at Tamil carefully. Why did you ask? Abraham inquired cautiously. Tamil froze up a little but never turned his head. My own family, they... Tamil trembled a little and shook it off. Did you have a question about Katie? I owe you answer. Tamil asked quickly, clearly trying to change the subject. Abraham was still concerned about Tamil, but his curiosity for the mystery of Katie was a little more pressing. He knew that the house was hiding something about her, and Tamil was just about to open up about it. However, he was limited to just one question. He had to make it count. What took Katie and where did they take her? Abraham finally asked. He knew it was two questions in one, but he had to hope that Tamil would answer at least one of them. Tamil frowned and pulled himself up from the dirt. He stood up, prompting Abraham to stand as well. Abraham looked into Tamil's pale eyes, which never met his. Katie taken, Tamil muttered. By weapon of mad, Tamil explained. Where she is, we do not know. That is why Asher searched for her. Abraham leaned close, desperate for more. What sort of weapon? You mean like a gun? And why does Asher search for her and not you or Michelle? Tamil smirked and looked away. I only promise you one question, Tamil said, holding up his finger to indicate that Abraham had already used up his question. Abraham groaned, feeling no closer to the truth than before. Well, thanks anyway, Tamil, Abraham said kindly, starting to walk away. Asher hurts, Tamil called, causing Abraham to turn, because Asher only one who can save her from it. Save her from what? Abraham asked. Tamil shook his head. From a weapon, Tamil said. Not a gun, but something worse. That is all I can say. Abraham grinned and nodded. Oh, thanks, Tamil. I appreciate it. I hope you don't get in trouble for telling me, Abraham called back. Tamil threw back his head and laughed. What can they do to me? He laughed. Have nothing to lose. Am already dead. Abraham wasn't sure whether to laugh at this statement or feel tremendously bad for poor Tamil. Regardless, Tamil had held up his promise and told Abraham what he knew. That was good enough for him. He turned and started heading back up towards the house. Fatigue had started to set in and he needed rest. Quite the little investigator, aren't you? Abraham nearly jumped out of his skin as he looked up the path to see Michelle leaning against the wall of the house, watching him through her ice blue eyes. Michelle, Abraham cried out. I didn't see you there, Michelle grinned. Perhaps you're so busy looking in places that you shouldn't that you weren't looking in the place that you should? Like what's right in front of you? Abraham nodded at her insult and decided to ignore her. It was obvious that Michelle didn't trust him, and he wasn't going to indulge her. Fine, I'll take better care next time. Abraham walked past her. I just gave you a clue, you knucklehead, Michelle shouted. Abraham stopped and turned to face her. She had a serious look on her face, and that looked away from him. Look, she said finally. We got off on the wrong foot, okay? I'm sorry for being so distrusting when you first arrived. Abraham placed his hands in his pockets and watched her. It looked like Michelle was having trouble admitting her mistake. No, I understand. There's no need to apologize. No, Asher was right earlier, Michelle said. We can't turn away someone in need just because of what they are. It makes us no different from your kind. My kind aren't all bad, Abraham defended. I know, because I was once like you. Abraham's eyes widened in shock. What? Abraham reached her jacket and lifted up the side, revealing a long scar along her waist. I was bitten when I was a little girl, Michelle said darkly. I thought I could get on with my normal life, but it wasn't easy. Soon the prejudice, the fear, and the humans forced me to flee. My dad had to let me go. Abraham suddenly felt nothing but remorse for her. He should have known that Michelle hadn't always been a werewolf. Did that maybe Asher and possibly Katie could have been normal too? I'm really sorry. Don't give me pity. Give me your word. My word? It was humans that drove me away from my father and from my life. And when I founded the Monster Club, I thought that I could start over. And then you showed up. I'm trusting you because you know what we've gone through. You know what it's like to live on the run and not have anything to call your own. But you have to give me your word that you will not rip this family apart, Michelle warned. Abraham nodded. I swear it, Abraham shouted. I'll write it in blood if I have to. Michelle giggled. Okay, no need for that, she said, trying to sound kind. Look, there's nothing you need to do out here. Why don't you go get some rest? You've had a long day of snooping. She turned and started walking back towards the yard. Abraham suddenly remembered that she'd said something earlier and called out, Michelle, what did you mean when you said you'd given me a clue? Michelle never looked back as she laughed. And here I thought you humans were smarter than this. Well, at least I was. Listen up, Holmes. You might learn something. You're looking in the wrong places. If you want answers, try looking at where the problem begins. Abraham didn't answer, but rather watched her walk further and further away. It's a riddle, Abraham grumbled. Normally, Abraham enjoyed puzzles and riddles, but he had been trying all day to get to the bottom of this, and he couldn't think of anything. What was he missing? What did the riddle mean? Gosh, I'm tired, Abraham groaned. Maybe a nap will help me think this through. Abraham walked back to the cabin and made his way up the steps and into the house. His mind was filled with questions, and it was mulling everything over. What could he be missing? What was the last piece? So, how did it go? Abraham spun to look and see Solomon sitting in his armchair. He had a book in his hand. He was looking up at Abraham with a grin on his face. I couldn't really find a job to do, so I'm going to bed. I wasn't talking about finding a job, boy, Solomon laughed. He put down his book and leaned towards Abraham. I'm talking about your little investigation on Katie. Abraham's eyes widened and he tried to act innocent, but Solomon laughed. Oh, don't think I'm so dense, boy. I knew what you would do the minute I sent you out there. And frankly, I wanted you to try and find out, to see what you could learn. Abraham looked at him stunned, and Solomon shook his head. One of the things you have to learn, boy, is that sometimes you can't get what you want by doing what people tell you to do. On occasion, you have to make the incentive and take initiative. I wanted to see if you would. So, what did you learn? I didn't find out much, just pieces of information and riddles, Solomon smiled. Really? Well, I have a happen of fondness for riddles. Let's hear about it. Maybe I can fill in the blanks for you. All right. And that is Chapter 4 of the Monster Club. Let me know what you guys think. Let me go ahead and pull up Raptor Girls so that we can read that before we call it in. Well, we've actually got more time. What would y'all like? Would you like me to read the chapter of Raptor Girls next, or would you like to read the next chapter of Monster Club? So sirens and mermaids are the exact same thing? Yes, they are. Calypso's explanation was that sirens were what mermaids called themselves before they evolved to be able to walk on land. All right, I got to vote for Raptors. That's one vote for Raptors. Another for Raptors. Hannah, I'm guessing you want me to do Raptors. All right, let me pull it up. Let me see. We will come back to Monster Club, though. I'm enjoying reading this. All right, Everyday Life with Raptors, Part 1. Okay, so for those, let me start by doing this. So, I think it would be a good idea to explain. Hold on. Oh, Duke. Okay. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to show you guys a quick image. 2 images, actually. Okay. First, I'm going to show you this image. I'm going to shrink it down so that y'all can see it a bit better. Okay, there we go. This image is the cover art that Hannah created for Everyday Life with Raptor Girls, and I think I should explain what it's about. So here's the setup. Do you guys remember in Jurassic World, the scene where Owen has to stand down the 4 raptors that he's trained, Delta, Charlie, Echo, and Blue? Well, a joking thing that at the same time I was seeing that, I also was watching Monster Musume, which is the story of if monster girls were real and they had to integrate into human society. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if this was Owen and the raptors were actually raptor girls and this was a Monster Musume kind of setup? And I told Hannah about that, and she loved the idea and said, you have to write this now. You have to write this. And so I said, okay, I will try to write this. And what happened was we came up with something very, very funny. So I think you guys will enjoy this. If you don't, I won't read it again. So that is the first image I'll show you. Let me take that down real quick. So take this down. And now let's add this image so that you can see the girls a little bit better. Here are the girls. Let's make the picture a little bigger. So what we have here, we have from left to right, we have Charlie, we have Delta, we have Echo, and we have Blue. So that is from left to right. Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Blue. So now you know the girls, and just so that you guys will still be able to appreciate this, I will keep the picture up for the duration of the reading. Okay? Okay. So let's get started. Everyday Life with Raptors, Part 1. I wrote this April 21st, 2018. All right. All ready? Let's do this. Owen groaned, carrying heavy groceries under his arms and approaching his house. To his neighbors, the house was uncharacteristically enormous. The building took up nearly an entire block of space, and there wasn't enough room for other houses to squeeze in next to his. The backyard itself was so vast and well kept that it would have been sinful just to disturb it with another home. This had not made Owen very popular for his neighbors, but it was a necessity. After all, the house wasn't just his home, but home to the pack. Gritting his teeth, he used his foot to open the door and kicked it open. "I'm home," he called. There was no response at first, and the house was dark. A chill ran down his spine. "Y'all, don't do this. I'm carrying groceries, and if even one egg breaks, I'm making every one of you do laps. You hear me?" Still no answer. He moved cautiously and carefully to the kitchen to set down the bags, praying that all was well and that nothing had happened to the pack, and that nothing would happen to him. Finally, he set down the last bag and took a single step back. "Rah! Ah!" Owen screamed as he felt a huge mass come screaming out of the shadows and tackle him to the ground. Long, sharp claws dug into his shirt, and he felt a long reptilian tail slap around his legs as the figure now stood over him, snake-like eyes staring down at him and sharp teeth bared. "Damn it, Charlie!" The figure was a girl, with short green hair tied back in a pair of small tails on her head. She beamed and started laughing happily as she sat on top of Owen, her tail waving back and forth under her dress. Her feet were not human girl feet, but rather the feet of velociraptors with 3 large claws. One of the 3 was retractable and longer than the others. She had savage claws for hands, but in truth, she wasn't all that dangerous to Owen. She never used them on him. She was the youngest of the raptor pack. I got you good that time, Owen. You're lucky I wasn't carrying anything. That's why I waited. The best predators wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. You need to really stop seeing me as the prey, Owen growled. Now get off. I need to get supper started. Maybe you are supper, another voice said gruffly. Owen turned around to see 2 more of the pack behind him, Delta and Echo. Delta had a savage sneer on her face and long teal-green hair. She was just wearing a button-down shirt and a pleated skirt, and her sharp teeth were bared. Next to her was Echo. Echo had longer reddish-brown curly hair and brown scales unlike her sisters. She had a nash along the side of her face from a fight she'd had when she was still young. She was wearing a pink t-shirt and tight torn green pants. She had a nervous look on her face, but didn't say anything. She'd been like this ever since she'd gotten that scar, timid and nervous about stepping out of her comfort zone. Delta, don't be mean, Charlie pouted. We're predators, Charlie. It's not mean, it's nature, Delta countered. But Delta, it's true, Echo. Owen knows it too. That's why he always finds reasons to leave, right? He never wants to be around us, so we're always alone. Because you're scared of us, right? That's not true, Delta, Owen argued. It just takes a lot to feed the 4 of you, so I need to go and work and buy food for you. It's not because I'm scared. Horse shit! Delta let a predatory shriek and launched herself at Owen, grabbing him and shoving him against the wall. Delta! Charlie squealed. Tell us the truth, Owen. You're afraid of us. That's why you're gone all the time. You just want us to go away, don't you? Owen groaned. Delta was hyper-aggressive, but Owen knew why. He was used to this behavior from her by now. Delta, calm down. Deep breaths, Owen whispered softly. Don't talk down to me. I am the apex predator here. You're just food. Want to see how it feels to be food? She snapped. That's enough. Every raptor stopped and spun around to see the new figure in the doorway. With a short-cut blue hair, wearing tight Daisy Dukes, a white shirt under a blue navy vest, she had navy scales and a fierceness in her eyes. Owen breathed a sigh of relief when he saw her. Ugh, Blue, thank goodness, he moaned. Blue marched to Delta and grabbed her shoulder forcefully. Put him down, Delta. Delta snarled at her, but Blue glared that menacing stare that turned blood cold. But Blue, that's an order, Blue barked. Delta groaned and instantly released Owen, stepping back and bowing. Now apologize to the Alpha. He is not our... Now, Delta! Blue snapped. Delta turned immediately to Owen and bowed. Sorry, Owen. Owen just held up his hand, and she backed up, blushing from embarrassment. Blue nodded at her and then turned to the girls. You should all be ashamed. Charlie, we practice hunting tactics in the yard, not on the Alpha. Shame on you. Sorry, Blue. And Echo, stop simpering in the corner. Step up. You're a soldier. Start acting like it. Right. Yes, ma'am, Echo squeaked. And as for you, Delta, get your attitude squared away, she snapped. Delta nodded in response, looking genuinely remorseful. Yes, ma'am, Delta answered. Now all of you, to the yard for 5 laps around the perimeter. Double time! Every raptor girl spun around and sprinted for the back door to begin their lap. Like trained military personnel, she sighed and looked back at Blue with a smile. Welcome home, Alpha. You can just call me Owen, Blue, you know that. Proper procedure is to address you by your rank, correct? Blue asked, standing at parade rest, her feet spread slightly and her hands behind her back. At ease, Blue, Owen rolled his eyes. Just chill out. What's wrong with you today? Why wouldn't I be upset? We're having an inspection today, and the girls need to be in tip-top condition to impress, she cried. Inspection? What inspection? She walked past Owen and grabbed a letter she'd opened from the counter and extended it to Owen, who opened it and read it from the form. Sure enough, it was a letter formally announcing that Captain Mark Grayson, the naval officer who had commissioned this raptor project, would be arriving to inspect the homestead and the general condition of the raptors. Owen groaned in disbelief as he read that he would arrive between 1930 hours and 2000 hours. Translated, that's 7:30 p.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. Ah, damn it, I imagine that means he'll be joining us for dinner, Owen asked. Considering his time of arrival, I would assume that, sir. And I've got a lot of cooking to do in a short amount of time. Can you get the girls cleaned up and properly dressed for me? Affirmative. After their run, we'll hit the showers and then be in our Class A's in time for the captain's arrival. I don't think Class A's are necessary. I'd just like the 4 of you wearing something nice. Blue blinked a moment and then blushed, rubbing the back of her head. Owen, we don't have any real nice clothes other than our Class A uniforms. Owen's eyes widened as he realized that she was right and looked at his feet. Well, then this weekend I'll take you out to get some nicer clothes. Not that what you're wearing isn't nice, but you shouldn't have to put on your Class A's for every nice occasion. Blue beamed and gave a respectful bow. I'll let the girls know, Blue replied, turning to leave. Owen smiled and turned back to the stove to begin cooking. Oh, one more thing, Blue gasped, turning back to Owen, who glanced up surprised. Blue smiled sheepishly and fiddled with her claw-like fingers. What is it? Permission to speak freely, Alpha. Blue, you girls can always speak freely. You don't have to ask. Of course. I just wanted to say for myself and the others that no matter what happens tonight during the inspection, we're honored to have worked with you. We wouldn't want anyone else as our Alpha, she said proudly. Owen frowned at this and looked back at the stove. Well, I appreciate that, Blue. Are you okay, sir? It's a personal thing. Don't worry about it. Get the girls ready, please. Yes, sir! Blue turned and ran outside to give her orders, leaving Owen lost in aggravated thought. 2 years ago, when the interspecies exchange bill had taken off in Japan, America had not been far behind in adopting it themselves. The question remained, however, could extra-species personnel be adapted for any occasion in the United States, including military service? After all, the bill forbade the extra-species to harm humans and vice versa. Would it work? Could it work? So a test study was allowed. The United States Navy funded and commissioned the exchange of 4 lizardmen raptor variant sisters into the United States under the condition that they were trained and raised by a former officer like former Lieutenant Owen Grady. He'd been staying with them for almost a month now, and their growth as operators was spectacular. Their raptor predatory instincts made them highly effective in tracking and takedown tactics. But Owen had a misgiving that he hadn't voiced to anyone, a misgiving that he feared the Navy wouldn't want to hear. They aren't weapons. They're girls, he growled softly to himself. The truth was that Owen felt guilty every time he ran the girls through drills or exercises. He felt ashamed they only had a few spare changes of clothes that weren't PT gear or their Class A's. He was annoyed that Blue always dressed him and the other girls in such a military fashion. The Navy was turning these girls into soldiers, when the point of the bill was to help them integrate into society. Even a soldier has the right to be a person outside of the military. He was grateful that the Navy had given these girls a chance to be part of American life, but in his soul, he wanted them to actually experience American life, not just the military life. Perhaps it was something he could bring up with Captain Grayson tonight. As he fired at the stove and pulled out the meat for dinner, he looked outside and saw Blue issuing her orders to get the girls inside and showered, and he felt his frown slowly shift to a smile. He hadn't expected it when he first met the girls, but he started to really care about them, like a family. He would put his best foot forward tonight. He wanted to keep the girls with him as long as he could. But then a thought occurred to him that caused his whole body to tense up. In all of his training sessions and drills with the girls, never once had he taught them the finer points of dinner manners. And he'd seen the way these girls could eat. Oh, Lord, I'm in trouble. And that was chapter 1 of the Raptor Girls. So, honest thoughts, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? I'm just imagining Owen to be a younger Chris Pratt in a different kind of Jurassic Park. I'm out of water. While you guys write what you think about the Raptor Girl story so far, I'm going to go refill. Be right back. Okay. Much better. You take a seat. Is this based on Jurassic World? Yes, I said that earlier. I was talking about how this is basically Jurassic World only with the Monster Musume world connected to it. It's very similar. All right, got a lot more people saying they like this than Monster Club. That's interesting. I'm kind of surprised by that. But okay, I mean, if the people have spoken, we will continue with Everyday Life with Raptor Girls. I've only got time to read one more. All right. Part 2, Everyday Life with Raptor Girls Part 2. I wrote this April 28th, 2018. Okay, so here we go. Ready, guys? Here we go. Chapter 2. A month ago, Owen Grady, a lieutenant in the Navy, had received new orders from Captain Mark Grayson to be taken off ship and returned to the States. There he was told about a top-secret initiative that he'd been only privy to that morning. Monsters existed. In fact, all around the world, in hidden islands and countries, were countless species of demi-humans. These extra-species persons had lived in isolation for centuries, but were now being brought out of the shadows and into the limelight. Japan had been the first country to adopt an interspecies exchange bill, in which demi-humans and humans could attempt to live and work in harmony with each other. America was next, but America's bill was somewhat different from the Japanese counterpart. The most glaring difference was that demi-humans could apply for United States citizenship. However, one aspect of the bill in America was the same in Japan. Demi-humans could not harm humans, and humans could not harm demi-humans. The purpose of the exchange bill was to push for interspecies cooperation and harmony. Violence or harm between the two would result in immediate deportation of the demi-human and possible incarceration of the human if the human was found to be at fault. So, what happens if a demi-human commits a crime that humans can't defuse? The military had a solution. In Japan, the Interspecies Exchange Program commissioned the MON or MON Squad, a team of demi-human special operatives who could defuse crimes and dangerous situations involving extra-species persons. In America, though, Commander Victor Hoskins commissioned the use of his own Special Operations Squad, 4 lizardmen, Raptor variants. These 4 girls, known as the Raptor Squad, were sisters and had a perfect fighting force. However, they needed training by a professional, and Lieutenant Owen Grady had a long history of working well with new recruits in the Navy. Being a former K-9 unit handler in the Los Angeles Police Department and a trainer in the Navy, who better to train these 4 Special Operations Raptors than him, right? Anyone but him. This is going to be a disaster, Owen mumbled to himself. At first, things didn't seem so bad. Dinner was coming along well. It was pork chops, which Owen knew would at least make Delta happy, seeing as that was her favorite. The girls, other than Charlie, were all old enough to drink wine, so Owen had made sure that Charlie was given sparkling grape juice instead, and he prepared salad and broccoli to go with the food. And that would be the first major problem. Other than Blue, who ate what she was given without complaint, the girls had a strong resentment for anything other than meat. Charlie and Delta turned their noses up at anything green, and Echo, though silent, would just glare at food she wasn't interested in. And then there was the second problem. The girls had almost no table manners to speak of. Blue could handle herself decently enough, but as a rule, the girls ate like savage animals, using their hands to scarf down what they saw on the table and being rather noisy about it, too. It had never bothered Owen too much. After all, he'd seen far worse from young recruits on board a ship. But for this inspection, the girls had to be on their best behavior. Could they handle it? Blue, front and center, Owen shouted. There was a clamor of movement, and sprinting in from the hallway came a fast object halting in front of Owen in the kitchen, who was still half focused on mixing the spices into the pork. Yes, sir, Blue cried. Owen turned towards her. Blue, could you— Oh, my God! Owen instantly covered his eyes as he saw that Blue was only half dressed with a towel around her waist. Why are you half naked? You called me, sir. You could have covered your top, though. Jesus! Sorry, sir. She quickly pulled up her towel to cover herself. It was better, but still very provocative. Present and accounted for, sir. Good. Damn it. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, right. Owen shook his head, recollecting his thoughts. Tonight's menu is pork chop, salad, and broccoli. Blue stiffened a bit, but nodded. It sounds good, sir. I'm worried that the girls won't eat their greens, though. Normally, it's not such a big deal, but tonight they need to be on their best behavior. Even if they don't like it, I need them to try to eat everything on their plates. I'll issue the order, sir. Blue bowed. Good. And one more thing. You're going to need to briefly instruct the girls on how to use better table manners. I know it's not something you're used to, but— No, I understand, sir. I'll teach them what I know, Blue assured him. That's not saying much, Owen thought to himself. Thanks, Blue. How are the girls? Charlie is cleaning up with Echo, and Delta and I are both done showering and getting dressed, Blue explained. Good. All right, that's all I needed. Blue stood at attention and bowed again, turning to leave. As she ran off, Owen groaned and leaned against the counter in frustration. God in heaven, please let this go over okay. You do that often? Owen spun around in surprise to see Delta leaning against the kitchen wall in the back. She was already wearing her Class A uniform, which was a black dress skirt under a khaki-colored button-down shirt. Ribbons of various colors and meaning adorned the left-hand chest of her uniform. Her name tag was resting on the right-hand side. She had a disgruntled look on her face, like she felt uncomfortable in it. Do what? Pray, she explained. Owen nodded and looked down at the skillet where the pork was cooking. Yeah, I do. Helps keep me calm, Owen replied. I guess that's cool, Delta shrugged. That may be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Owen laughed. Delta flushed and crossed her arms angrily. Whatever. I just came down because I smelled pork chops. Yeah, just because we have company coming doesn't mean we can't still do your favorite tonight. I promised we'd do pork chops tonight, didn't I? Yes, sir, Delta grumbled. You're not poisoning it, are you? Owen groaned and turned to look at Delta. What are you talking about? Nothing, sir. Just a question. She then turned on her heel and walked out of the kitchen. Owen rubbed his forehead, trying to relieve his stress. I don't think I'll ever get these girls. It would be another hour before the doorbell rang, and at last the moment of truth arrived. Girls, front and center, Owen shouted. The stomping of feet could be heard as well. 4 girls sprinted downstairs to stand ready for attention. Owen walked to the door and opened up to reveal a tall black man in a navy uniform, a captain's insignia on his sleeve, and a hat under his arm. He gave a brief nod to Owen and a friendly smile. Good evening, Captain Grayson, Owen said, stepping aside to let the captain inside. Thank you for letting me come on such short notice. I'm afraid I have some major schedule conflicts, and I wasn't able to come earlier than this. Well, we plan to eat soon if you'd like to join us, Owen offered. I did hope, but I didn't want to propose, he laughed. Where are the... Oh, my, how impressive. Owen turned and smiled to see all 4 girls dressed in their Class A uniforms and standing at a perfect attention for the captain. Blue took a single step forward and saluted. Sir, all present and accounted for, sir. She then took a step back, rejoining her sisters. Captain Grayson saluted and then returned. At ease, girls, at ease. I see there's no less discipline than when I last left them, Grayson chuckled. I work diligently with them every day, sir. Yes, well, we'll need to discuss that over dinner. But first, I am starving. Let's get to that dinner table, shall we? The girls seemed to lighten up at the thought, particularly Charlie, who looked so fidgety and anxious to get to the table, her tail wouldn't stop moving from half a moment. Twice, Blue had to nudge her back into place. She was jittering so bad. Owen finally grinned and nodded. Go on, get to the table. Yes! Charlie launched herself to the dinner table with Delta and Echo behind her. Blue stayed close to Owen as he followed after. Blue, did you instruct them like I asked? As best I could. Whether or not it will stick is debatable, sir. God help me. Owen tried not to watch. The image was just too painful. Blue was managing moderately well, though she had a bad habit of putting her elbows on the table and leaning across the table to get bread. Echo wasn't too bad either, but she kept dropping food in her lap as forks were not easy for her to handle. Frankly, she was more accustomed to just grabbing the food and eating it. Most of the girls had an aversion to utensils. It was Delta and Charlie, though, that made everything cringy. To Delta's credit, she was making an attempt to putting her napkin in her lap, a feat even Blue had forgotten to do, but she was savage in her eating, ripping the pork with her teeth rather than cutting it with a knife. She would lift the entire slab of meat up with her fork and rip it apart piece by piece. As for the salad, she all out rejected it until Blue growled at her from across the table. Now she was picking at it, but hardly eating it. Charlie, by far, was the worst. She didn't seem to even retain anything, and she scarfed down the pork. She was more than liberal with the gravy as she doused the pork in it and ripped it apart like a wolf built on carnage. Blue was flushing from ear to ear at the appalling behavior. Captain Grayson, I am so sorry. Don't be, Grayson chuckled, though he too was having trouble observing the feast. I'm not bothered. Owen didn't need a bite. He was too ashamed. After an hour, the girls finished, and Owen snapped his fingers. They all jumped to their feet, standing at attention. Delta and Charlie had most of their food plastered on their face from their ravenous eating. Owen looked at Blue and nodded his head slowly. Girls, report to clean up. Charlie, Echo, you're on dishes. Delta, you're with me on table teardown. Go! The girls jumped into high gear. Delta and Blue began breaking down the table, removing replacemats and dishes, and running them to the kitchen. Charlie and Echo grabbed dish rags and started tossing dirty plates and skillets in the sink to scrub them. Owen could finally smile at this. They might not be the best eaters, but they were efficient in cleaning messes. It was like they were incapable of being clean and tidy, but more than happy to clean up the messes they made. An admirable quality. Captain Grayson just silently sipped his cup of tea while he watched the girls work. It wasn't until they were all out of the room and working that the captain spoke again. I don't have much time, Lieutenant Grady, so I suppose I should get straight to the point. I came here to inspect the raptors and see how they're growing since I last saw them, but I also came with some news for you. And what's the verdict? Owen asked. Oh, they're doing marvelous. It's reassuring to see how they've adapted to life on the outside. Last time I saw those 4, they were still just children, fighting over who would be leader. And you weren't surprised it was Blue? Owen chuckled. Oh, Blue's biggest rival was always Echo, but it seems Blue's really coming to her own as their pack leader. I couldn't be more proud of her. Oh, poor Echo, though. She's always been like that, though, Owen pointed out. Oh, not always. You wouldn't believe it, but a few years ago, back before you gave them their names, she was just as cold and calculating as Blue was. The problem was she had no control of her own ego, and that ended up getting the better of her. Ask Blue about the scar on Echo's face, and you'll know what I mean. I'm afraid to ask about those kind of personal things, I confessed. But anyway, that's beside the point. Do you want some coffee? I'd love some. After Owen poured him some coffee and the two sat down in the den, he spoke again. Captain Grayson, what news was it that you wanted to mention? I think we both got a little off topic. Grayson nodded in reply and sipped his coffee. Hoskins has demanded a field test, he answered. Owen sneered at the name. Victor Hoskin was a former Navy officer who was constantly working to develop new weapon systems and advances in military tools and technology. He'd been the one who sponsored the girls staying in America, and he convinced the Navy to continue funding the experiment. That meant he called most of the shots. Without his support, there would be no money for them to live off. Frankly, he thinks the girls have had enough time to get familiar with human life and need to be tested in the field on real targets. Damn that man. The girls hate his guts with a passion, I know. Last time he was here, he refused to even call them by their names. Just their numbers, Owen snarled. I don't want to do him any favors. I'm afraid the Navy agrees with him, though. The girls need to demonstrate that their funding is going to good use. As I recall, we started this project to help control extra-species criminal incidents. What if nothing happens? Owen snapped back. Let's be honest here, Captain. We both know what Hoskins wants. He's trying to turn these girls into... Lock it up, Lieutenant, Captain Grayson barked, silencing Owen before he finished his comment. Understand me. I don't like Hoskins any more than you do. And I do agree that he's a fool. But I'm afraid he also has a point. We can't spend valuable Navy assets on an exchange program like this without some kind of evidence our time and energy is well spent. Yes, sir, I understand. Well, in that case, we will be in touch. When the next extra-species criminal incident takes place, you'll be our first call. Have the girls ready to deploy when it happens. Sir, with all due respect, you seem certain something will happen, Owen growled. There have been a fair number of criminal activities taking place this last month. The media just doesn't want to publicize them the way they should be. I fully expect something will happen in a week or two, Grayson confessed. He stood up and put back on his hat as he made his way to the door. And as I said before, I didn't mean to pop in so suddenly, and thank you for that delicious dinner. It's reassuring to see the girls so healthy and happy. Thank you for your hard work, Grady. Of course, sir. Owen gave a nod of respect, and Grayson turned, marching out of the house. Grady simply sat in stunned silence, contemplating what he'd just been told. A field test? We're actually going to take these girls out in the field? And that was part 2. Yeah, not too much to it. That was part 2. Crazy, right? Now, let me ask a quick question. I know that it's late, but would you like me to read a third part? I will let you guys decide while I get another drink. Okay, we got 2 saying yes. I got a third yes. Okay, I guess y'all want... I'll take your entire stock. Okay, looks like y'all want one more. All right, but this will be the last one, then I've got to call it a night, okay? And then, since we're reading New Epoch, Monster Club, and Raptor Girls, we might have to do this again on Monday next week, if I'm free. So yes, let's do it. Chapter 3. This one was written May 12th, 2018. Everyday Life with Raptor Girls, Part 3. Here we go. It was just like Captain Grayson had said. Within 4 days of his visit, they'd gotten a call from Hoskins that they had an emergency requiring the girls' response. Owen was now sitting in the back of a large armored police SUV. He was reading a tablet in his lap, detailing the situation to him. Meanwhile, the 4 girls were already gearing up. For this job, they'd been given tight body armor, each one a different color to indicate their identity to the other without verbal cues. Blue was standing in her navy blue one-piece suit, looking like she was a lifeguard or Olympic athlete. She was holding onto a strap from the roof of the van and was inspecting the others to ensure they were ready. Delta was already ready to go in her teal-colored gear. She wasn't looking at the others, but rather staring out the window as they tore down the road, the sirens in the van warning other cars to stay back. Echo was helping Charlie into her dark green suit. She looked so uncomfortable in it. Charlie had always preferred loose-fitting clothes. That's why she liked skirts. This one-piece leotard-style gear felt too constricting to her. Echo didn't seem to have any complaints about her red gear. She merely smiled at Charlie's stretching and got herself familiar with the outfit. Alpha, sir, Blue spoke up. Permission to speak. Granted, Owen answered. You were unclear before leaving as to the nature of our mission aside from that it was a hostage situation? Blue explained. If it's all right, I'd like to know the details of our task. All the girls now turned their attention to Owen, waiting to hear what he had to say. Owen lowered his tablet and stood up, gripping the handlebar above him. All right, girls, all eyes on me and all ears open. I'm going to give you the situation. Sir, yes, sir, they answered in unison. Exactly 2 hours ago, at 2000 hours, 4 orcs, 2 minotaurs, and at least 1 devil took control of a shopping mall in downtown Los Angeles, Owen explained. They've taken at least 49 people hostage, and we're pretty sure that their demands are. We believe the devil is leading them, possibly through some form of hypnosis. Ruddy little shits, Delta growled. Lock it up, Delta, Blue snapped. Sorry about that, Alpha. Your mission is to infiltrate the mall through the roof into the Dillard Shopping Center. There you are to work as a team to accomplish 2 objectives. Rescue the humans and extra-species hostages, and to incapacitate the criminals. Rules of engagement? Echo asked. The civilians are priority alpha. We cannot have one of them get hurt, or it would cause issues for the progression of the interspecies exchange bill. For that reason, we're sending you in without firearms. We can't risk a misfire or a crossfire. Well, we haven't trained in firearm tactics yet anyway, so that's fine, Charlie giggled. Just old-fashioned tooth and nail. Damn straight, Delta agreed. I said lock it up. Alpha has the floor, Blue shouted. Relax, Blue. I'm just commenting, Delta shrugged. It's all right, girls. Calm down, Owen grumbled. Once the girls were quiet again, he continued. Anyway, the criminals are secondary here. We prefer them alive, but if your hands are forced, take them down hard. Yes, sir, Blue nodded. Blue, once you're breached, you take point. With a nod, Blue turned to the girls who all nodded their agreement. Any questions? How much are the targets packing? Echo whispered. The orcs have some illegally obtained firearms. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure. Your suits will provide moderate protection, but otherwise do your best to stay out of their line of fire. Any cover you can provide? Blue asked. The local Leos have taken control of the power to the mall and will shut off the lights to provide cover. Since the sun is down, the night will give you an advantage, but be warned, the orcs are more than capable of smelling you out. Don't hesitate. Work as a unit. Will you be taking us somewhere? Will you be talking to us while we're inside? Charlie asked. We have access to the cameras inside the building, and I'll issue orders where I can, but otherwise, this is your op. Like I said, Blue is taking point. Owen looked at Delta. What about you, Delta? Any questions? Just point me to who needs to die. Yeah! Charlie agreed. Delta, lethal force only if necessary. We're here to enforce peace, Owen replied. You know what? Why does everything I say have to get a negative response from people? Lock it up, Owen snapped. Delta, I'm glad you're excited, but Blue's right. Let's keep lethal force down to as low as possible. Blue, go easy on the team. Everyone's a little on edge. Blue bowed her head. Sorry, sir. Yeah, what she said, Delta grumbled. If there are no more questions, take these. He reached out, holding out 4 earplugs for them to put into their ears. All the girls took one and inserted them into their right ear. Owen lifted a small microphone to his mouth and spoke. Testing, can you 4 hear me? All the girls held up their thumbs. This will be our means of communication. We're coming to the mall now. This is where we part ways. The chief negotiator will lead you to your assigned location. Thank you, sir, Blue saluted. We won't let you down. I know you won't. The van finally came to a stop and Echo pushed open the door for the girls to climb out. Good luck. And may the force be with you, Charlie added. Really, Charlie? Echo giggled. I knew we shouldn't have brought you those dumb movies. Now you're quoting them. Shut up, Delta. They were all great. Even you liked The Empire Strikes Back, Charlie cried defensively. My favorite part was the lightsaber battle where Owen shook his head as the girls gossiped their way out of the van and into the tent where the chief negotiator waited for them. God help me, what am I going to do with those 4? The inside of the mall was uncharacteristically empty. When the monsters had taken over the premises, there had been a mad scramble to escape. Now the only humans left in the building were about 45 to 50, who were all packed in the middle of the food court with a minotaur and an orc guarding them, both armed with submachine guns. They were both tall, male, bulging with muscles. They hardly needed the guns to look intimidating. Sitting on the bench in front of them, licking an ice cream cone, was what appeared to be a teenage girl with horns poking out of her head, and with red skin and dark yellow eyes. She had on thick makeup and wings on her back like a demon. She had her legs crossed and was twiddling her fingers bored. So boring. I thought the police might come barging in or something. When I heard I was getting sent to America for my homestay, I was sure it'd be more fun than this. There's nothing to do. She was a greater devil, a subspecies of the devil race that was teenage in appearance, but just as childish as lesser devils. This one, however, was on the no-fly list. She was supposed to be barred from coming to America, but had somehow slipped through the cracks. Now the mall was being held hostage. She pulled out her radio and clicked the receiver. "You pigs see any other stragglers?" "No, ma'am. Ain't seen no..." Before he could finish, the lights in the entire mall went out. The hostages behind her all squealed with fright, and the devil stood up surprised. "What the hell just happened? Why did we lose power? This a joke?" "Boss, what's happening?" "How should I know, you dumb cow?" She growled at the Minotaur behind her. "Just watch the hostages. Something's not right." Suddenly, static appeared on the radio. "Boss! Boss, you gotta help! They got Pete! It's on!" There was the sound of an animal-like shriek, and then the line went dead with a loud thud, as if the orc holding the radio had suddenly hit the ground hard. A chill ran down the devil's spine, and she dropped the radio in a panic. There were predators in the mall, and they weren't police. Owen could see the whole show through the wall of a mall camera he had access to. Two orcs had been walking the same hallway past a GameStop. From out of the GameStop like a flash of lightning, Delta had burst out like a missile, tackling the closest one to the ground, knocking him out with a punch to the nose. The other grabbed for his radio, squealing for help from a boss, but before he could get far, Charlie came sprinting out of hiding in the woman's clothing store and struck him down, slamming her whole body feet first into his chest with a raptor-like shriek. With two of the orcs down, that left two more orcs and two minotaurs plus the devil. According to the cameras, the devil was with one orc and one minotaur in the food court with the hostages. There was only one way into the food court, so it would be hard to use the element of surprise. He needed a plan. "Blue, do you copy?" "Affirmative," Blue's voice responded. "I've got eyes on the hostages and 3 bogeys, 2 armed, all packed in the food court. You only have 1 POE, a straight hallway down the center. No surprise attacks." "Orders?" "It's a game of chess, Blue. Remember last week when I played you?" "I remember Blue lost. It was so funny," Charlie giggled over the comms. "Lock it up, Charlie," Blue groaned. "Blue, remember how I won. What did I do to take your king?" There was a long silence from Blue, and then a sudden realization. 10-4, Alpha, do you have a visual on the other tangos?" "Your Minotaur is upstairs by the jeans store. The other orc is trying to make his way back to the food court from the west wing of the mall. I think he's in a panic." "Echo, Charlie, head to the west wing and cut off that pig before he gets home. Delta, head to the upper level and flush out that Minotaur." The girls darted without a moment's hesitation, and Owen could watch it all happen. Through screens, he saw the Minotaur panic as a terrified Delta burst out of the clothesline and sent her screaming back towards the escalator. Meanwhile, the orcs had been running from the west wing, was now run and brought down by Charlie and Echo. Echo had jumped and slammed the force of her body into his back, while Charlie used her foot claw to slash his leg out from under him. "Orc is down," Echo announced. "Minotaur running for the escalator," Delta informed. "Delta, cease pursuit," Blue ordered. "Pull back and let the Minotaur get closer to the food court. Echo, hide in the arcade and engage on my command." The devil had picked up the radio and was now calling frantically. "Pete? AJ? Susie? Someone talk to me! What's going on out there?" You think Susie's okay?" the Minotaur man asked, concern on his face. "I'm sure she's fine, Chad. Just help!" All 3 turned at the sound of a cry. From down the hall, the female Minotaur was running, fear in her eyes, and she was completely out of breath. Chad broke from his boss's side and ran to her. "Susie! Susie, you're right! What is it? Susie!" It was too late. From out of a nearby arcade, a bolt of red shot out of the doorway and struck her to the ground. With a kick so strong, the sound of her broken jaw could be heard across the room. Chad turned to flee, but a navy blue rocket shot down the hall and plunged its fist into his horned head. The orc, seeing the big, strong Minotaurs get taken down in seconds, ran squealing for cover. "No, don't run, you fat idiot!" It was too late. A teal streak sprinted down the hall and past the devil, leaping out and knocking the orc down, using her tail to trip him up and then using her foot to step on his face, knocking him out. Now the devil could see the hunters. All 3 stood around her now, adorned in scales and tight armor. They looked like lizard men, but weren't quite. They had the feet of raptors and muscles of toned athletes. All their eyes were now on her as they began to spread around her, growling like predators. She held up her hands and tried to speak slowly as the blue-haired one drew closer and closer. "Don't come 1 step closer," she snapped. Blue stopped with 2 locked eyes. "I have hostages." "Orders, Blue?" Echo asked, crouching low and ready to move. Delta took the same crouching stance. Blue didn't move a muscle. She was judging, waiting. The first part of the plan had worked. Just like in that game of chess, she'd drawn the knights away from the king and left her exposed. But now she had hostages. What was the next best move? "Hold," she instructed. "You 3 better back up," she said. "Back up or I'll kill one of the hostages. Damn, I can't believe all this gang was taken down by 3 lizards." Well, see, you're wrong on 2 counts, Blue explained. "There were actually 4. She let out a whistle and dropped to one knee. From behind, Charlie sprinted in, using her back as a springboard. Charlie leapt off of Blue and delivered a devastating flying kick into the Devil's face, sending her crashing to the ground. As Charlie stood again, smiling a broad, toothy grin, Blue stood up straight and proud. And the second thing you got wrong? We're raptors, not lizards. Blue then touched the earpiece on her head and spoke slowly but happily. Alpha, Blue here. All targets are down and hostages are rescued. I repeat, mission complete. Well, good job, girls. I think you've all earned a meal out tomorrow night. And that was chapter 3. So we'll have to read chapter 4 next time. Well, that gave you a little bit of a introduction, I'd say. Go ahead and delete that. Okay. Well, let me know, before I go, what did you guys think of the stories you read tonight? What did you think of New Epic, the Raptor Girls, and Monster Club? What did you think? All right, well, I'm glad y'all enjoyed, but it is getting late now. Before we go, before we go, I want to say 2 things. First of all, I don't know what my schedule will be next week, so I don't know when or if I'll be able to do another reading stream. I want to say that I should be able to do it Monday of next week. I want to say that, but I don't know for sure, so keep me in your prayers as we approach that opportunity to stream again. Secondly, if you guys are enjoying my writing and want to hear me do more writing stuff, again, I urge you to please check out my other channel, Raven's Writing Room, on which you can not only hear more of my stories, but some of my writing advice, writing philosophies, Bible studies, and other interesting things. The channel is still in its fledgling stages. Even though it just recently reached 1,000 subs, it still has very few viewers, and I would like to see that change. I would love to see that channel grow some more. I am very hopeful that y'all will check it out and that channel will grow. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have been enjoying my reading and enjoying these just chill out, relaxing nights. I have really enjoyed them myself. They give me time to just unwind and read stories with you guys and look back at my old writing. You might have even noticed that Monster Club sounds a little different from my normal writing, and that's because I wrote it when I was much younger, back when I was, because right now I'm 31. I had to be about 20 or 21 when I wrote Monster Club. And you can tell that my writing it was very different back then. It was much different. But yeah, so I'm so glad that y'all have been enjoying. I hope that y'all will continue to enjoy as we go forward. But I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. And don't forget, guys, do not forget, Wednesday night, my brother will be streaming. I believe he's streaming Shadow of War. And Thursday, I will be doing a Warriors Den live stream with the stream. We'll be getting to watch and see the new hero reveal. I'm very much looking forward to it. I know I sound tired. It's because I am. Thank you guys so much. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.